People are more likely to remember emotionally charged events. Memory is not a cold archive of facts. It is a living, breathing reflection of what shook us most deeply. When an event carries strong emotion, it burns itself into the brain with far greater intensity than the mundane details of everyday life. You may not remember the countless mornings you drank coffee, but you can recall, with startling clarity, the moment you lost someone you loved, the rush of pride at a long-awaited victory, or the sting of words that cut you years ago. Our minds prioritize emotional experiences because, from an evolutionary standpoint, they once meant survival. Recognizing danger, holding on to grief, or remembering joy gave us an advantage in a world where forgetting could cost us everything. At the center of this lies the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system. When adrenaline floods your body during fear or excitement, the amygdala signals the hippocampus to mark the memory as vital. That is why heartbreak feels endless, why trauma can replay like a broken record, and why happiness from life's peak moments glows in your mind long after the moment itself has passed. The intensity of the feeling decides the permanence of the memory. This explains why people can describe with precision where they stood during tragic news or the exact words exchanged in a fight, yet struggle to recall what they had for lunch 2 days ago. Ordinary events fade into the blur of time, but emotional ones carve deep grooves into the brain. In many ways, the story of your life is not built on routine, but on the emotional spikes that shaped who you became. Smiling, even when forced, can actually make you feel happier. A smile is far more than an expression. It is a trigger, a switch that flips inside the brain and alters how you feel. Even when the smile is fake, forced, or mechanical, the act of lifting the corners of your mouth sends signals to your brain that something positive is happening. This is known as the facial feedback hypothesis, and it suggests that the body and mind are not separate, but intertwined in a constant loop of influence. The brain, astonishingly, does not always distinguish between genuine joy and the physical act of smiling. It reacts to the movement as though happiness is real. When you smile, your brain releases tiny floods of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, the chemicals responsible for happiness, relaxation, and even pain relief. It is why actors performing on stage often find themselves feeling the emotions they are only pretending to portray, and why therapists sometimes encourage people in despair to smile through it. The action itself becomes a quiet rebellion against sadness, a physiological nudge toward a brighter state of mind. Think of the times you've smiled politely at a stranger, only to find your mood lift unexpectedly afterward. Or the moments when laughter, even if forced at first, spiraled into something real. The body tricks the mind and the mind responds in kind. Smiling becomes a feedback loop, pulling you upward, however slightly, from the weight of negativity. It is a simple gesture, almost too small to matter, yet it carries within it the power to shift how you see yourself and how the world feels around you. People are more likely to conform in groups, even if they know the group is wrong. Human beings crave belonging so intensely that they will sometimes betray their own eyes and silence their own voices just to remain part of the group. When surrounded by others, the weight of collective opinion can press down so heavily that even obvious truths begin to blur. A famous experiment by Solomon Asch revealed this disturbing reality. Participants, when asked to compare the lengths of lines, often gave blatantly wrong answers simply because everyone else in the room had done so. They knew the truth, yet they denied it, choosing the comfort of conformity over the discomfort of isolation. At the heart of this lies a primal fear, being cast out. In our evolutionary past, to be alone meant danger, vulnerability, and even death. The tribe was survival, and so our brains learned to adapt, to yield, and to mimic the majority, even at the cost of truth. That ancient wiring still governs us today, whispering that it is safer to agree than to stand apart. You felt this yourself, the unease of holding a different opinion in a heated discussion, the nervous laugh when everyone else laughs, though you find nothing funny, the quiet nod when your instincts scream disagreement. Conformity seduces us with the promise of acceptance, but the price is authenticity. In the presence of a group, we become smaller versions of ourselves, willing to dim our light for the illusion of unity. And in that moment, truth bends, not to reality, but to the will of the crowd. The average person has about 60,000 thoughts a day, most of which are repetitive. Your mind is a restless storm, generating tens of thousands of thoughts every single day, an endless stream of words, images, and feelings flickering in and out of consciousness. Scientists estimate that the number hovers around 60,000, but what is even more striking is that the vast majority of those thoughts are not new. They are echoes, recycled fragments of yesterday, reruns of the same worries, doubts, and daydreams that played out the day before. Our minds are creatures of habit, endlessly replaying the familiar instead of crafting the new. This repetition has a reason. The brain, built for survival, holds on to patterns because predictability once meant safety. By rehearsing scenarios, anticipating dangers, and rehashing past experiences, our ancestors learned how to adapt and avoid threats. But in the modern world, this wiring often turns against us, trapping us in loops of anxiety, regret, and overthinking. The argument you can't stop replaying, the worry you wake up to each morning, the endless cycle of what-ifs. They are the ghosts of thoughts that refuse to die. Yet within this relentless noise lies a haunting truth. Most of our mental energy is consumed by repetition, not creation. We live inside a cage of our own thinking, believing we are moving forward, when often we are circling the same ground. Those 60,000 thoughts are not evidence of freedom, but of mental captivity, unless we learn to step outside the loop. Without awareness, the mind does not progress. It simply repeats over and over until the echoes become our reality. Eye contact can make people appear more trustworthy. There is something ancient and unspoken about the power of eyes meeting. A single gaze can disarm, seduce, intimidate, or reassure without a word being spoken. When someone holds your gaze, even for a moment, your brain instinctively scans it for honesty, and more often than not, eye contact is read as a signal of sincerity. It tells us, I am here, I see you, I have nothing to hide. This is why leaders command attention with their eyes, why lovers lock into each other's gaze, and why liars often avert it. The eyes do not just see, they reveal. From birth, humans are wired to seek out eyes. Babies will fixate on them before they notice any other part of a face, sensing safety and connection. Evolution shaped us this way because reading another's intent could mean the difference between survival and betrayal. A steady gaze offered assurance. This person is an ally. A shifting, evasive glance warned, something here cannot be trusted. You have likely felt it. The warmth that spreads when someone listens to you fully, their eyes never drifting away. It makes your words feel valuable, your presence acknowledged, your being respected. On the other hand, the sting of broken eye contact can feel like rejection, as though you suddenly no longer matter. Eye contact is intimacy distilled into seconds. It builds invisible bridges, bypassing logic and burrowing into instinct. When someone meets your eyes and holds them, it's not just a glance, it's an unspoken contract, one that whispers, you can trust me. People tend to mimic the body language of those they like. Without even realizing it, your body betrays your feelings. When you like someone, whether it's a friend, a stranger, or someone who has captured your heart, your posture, gestures, and movements begin to align with theirs. This subtle imitation, known as limbic mirroring, is not taught but instinctive. If they lean in, you lean in. If they cross their arms, you might do the same. If they smile, your own lips curve almost involuntarily. It is as if your body is whispering, I'm with you. I feel what you feel. This unconscious dance is powered by mirror neurons, special brain cells that fire both when we act and when we observe someone else acting. They allow us to step inside another person's experience, to feel what they feel, and to reflect it physically. Mimicking body language is more than a quirk. It is a powerful display of connection. It signals trust, safety, and unspoken intimacy. It tells the other person, even without words, you are understood here. Think of two lovers at dinner leaning toward each other in perfect synchrony, or friends who burst into the same laugh with matching gestures, or a child copying the stance of a parent they admire. These moments of reflection create a rhythm of belonging, a sense of harmony that deepens bonds and draws people closer. But here lies the deeper truth. The more you like someone, the more your body surrenders to this mirroring. Attraction and affection override conscious control, revealing themselves in gestures you never planned. Your body speaks the language of connection before your mind ever dares to admit it. Writing down your goals makes you more likely to achieve them. There is something almost magical that happens when a thought leaves your mind and lands on paper. A goal spoken aloud can be forgotten, but a goal written down takes on weight, permanence, and power. Studies show that people who physically write out their ambitions are far more likely to achieve them than those who only keep them in their head. It's not just about planning. It's about declaring to yourself and to the world, this matters, this is real, this is mine to chase. When you write a goal, your brain shifts into a state of ownership. It is no longer a passing wish floating in the fog of your mind, but a tangible vision staring back at you in ink. The act of writing triggers your reticular activating system, the brain's filter for information, sharpening your focus on opportunities and decisions that align with your desire. Suddenly, what once felt distant begins to feel possible, even inevitable. Think of the difference between saying, I want to be healthier, and writing, I will run 3 times a week for the next 3 months. The first is a dream, fragile and easy to dismiss. The second is a commitment, a contract between you and yourself. The written word holds you accountable, haunting you in the quiet moments when you feel like giving up, reminding you of the promise you made. Writing is a small act, yet it transforms the invisible into the visible. It takes ambition from the shadows of the mind and carves it into the fabric of reality, making it harder to ignore and far easier to pursue. People are more likely to recall the first and last items in a list. Memory does not treat all information equally. When you are presented with a list of items, your brain has a peculiar habit. It clings tightly to the first things you see and the last things you hear, while the middle slips away like sand between your fingers. Psychologists call this the serial position effect, and it reveals how our minds are drawn to beginnings and endings, leaving the middle ground to fade into obscurity. The reason lies in how memory is processed. The first items in a sequence feel special, almost like they are carved into fresh stone, free from interference. They gain strength through what is known as the primacy effect, because they are rehearsed more in your mind. The last items, however, benefit from the recency effect, lingering at the surface of short-term memory like glowing embers before they fade. But the middle, those poor, ordinary details, are too easily crowded out, buried under the weight of what came before and what followed after. Think about your own life. You remember the first day of school, the first words of a powerful speech, the first time someone you loved spoke your name. You remember the last lines of a song, the final goodbye, the closing scene of a movie that left you breathless. But the middle often blurs, swallowed by time. We are wired to give importance to beginnings and endings, and in doing so, we forget the rest. Our minds, it seems, are storytellers, always chasing the opening note and the final chord. Compliments, activate the same reward system in the brain as cash. A simple compliment carries far more weight than most people realize. When someone praises you, whether for your appearance, your effort, or your ideas, the brain lights up in the same regions that activate when you receive money. To your mind, kind words can feel like currency. This is because compliments trigger the brain's reward circuitry, releasing dopamine and creating a surge of warmth, satisfaction, and validation that mirrors the pleasure of tangible rewards. Think about the last time someone told you they admired your work, or that you looked good, or that you made a difference. It lingered, didn't it? That glow in your chest wasn't just emotion, it was chemistry. Your brain, starved for recognition in a world that often overlooks, treated that compliment as treasure. For many, words can feel even richer than cash because they touch a deeper human need, the desire to be seen, valued, and acknowledged. Compliments are powerful not only because they reward the receiver, but because they strengthen bonds between people. When given sincerely, they create intimacy, trust, and a sense of closeness that money could never buy. A genuine compliment can lift someone out of despair, spark motivation where there was fatigue, or make a fleeting day unforgettable. Yet, this power can also be weaponized. Manipulators know how to use compliments as tools of influence, showering others with praise to lower defenses and gain favor. The human brain cannot help but respond. It craves the validation, even when the intent is false. Compliments, then, are both a gift and a weapon, holding the ability to shape emotions as profoundly as wealth itself. People can experience physical pain when socially rejected. Rejection is not just an emotional sting, it can feel like a wound carved into the body itself. Neuroscience has revealed something haunting. The same areas of the brain that process physical pain, like the anterior cingulate cortex, also light up when we are socially excluded, ignored, or cast aside. To the brain, a broken heart and a broken bone are not so different. That sinking in your chest, that heaviness in your stomach, the ache that keeps you awake at night, it is your body registering rejection as if you had been physically injured. This connection is no accident. For our ancestors, belonging to the tribe was a matter of life and death. To be rejected was to be left vulnerable, exiled from the protection of the group. The brain evolved to treat rejection as danger, sounding alarms so piercing that we would do anything to restore connection. That survival mechanism still lingers in us today, which is why being ghosted by a friend, excluded from a group, or betrayed by a partner can feel unbearable. The pain of rejection lingers longer than we expect. Studies show that people replay moments of social exclusion over and over, just as someone might probe a bruise. Even words like no or not good enough can scar us, echoing in the body long after they were spoken. What makes rejection so brutal is not just the loss of someone else, but the silent message it delivers. You are not wanted, you are not enough. And in that moment, the mind and body fuse together, making emotional wounds ache as sharply as physical ones. Multitasking reduces efficiency and lowers IQ temporarily. Multitasking feels seductive. It gives the illusion of productivity. The quick switching between emails, messages, calls, and tasks makes you feel like you are conquering everything at once. But beneath this illusion lies a painful truth. The brain is not built for true multitasking. Every time you shift from one task to another, your mind experiences a moment of lag, a hidden cost of switching gears. That constant back and forth drains energy, reduces efficiency, and, shockingly, can temporarily lower your IQ by as much as 15 points, the mental equivalent of pulling an all-nighter. What really happens when you multitask is not simultaneous brilliance, but fractured focus. Your brain, unable to fully engage with two demanding tasks at once, rapidly toggles between them, leaving fragments of attention scattered in every direction. This fragmented state makes mistakes more likely, slows down progress, and steals the clarity you need for deep, meaningful work. In fact, researchers have found that people who pride themselves on multitasking are often worse at filtering distractions and organizing their thoughts than those who focus on one thing at a time. Think about it. The email half read while listening to a conversation, the text typed during a meeting, the TV show playing while you scroll through your phone. Each action feels harmless, yet each one chips away at the sharpness of your mind. Instead of mastery, you are left with mediocrity spread across tasks. Multitasking doesn't make you faster. It makes you forgetful, careless, and exhausted. The truth is harsh but liberating. Doing less at once allows you to do more that matters. People are more likely to help others when they feel watched. There is something powerful about the human gaze. When we sense eyes upon us, even if it's just a glance or the faint impression of being observed, our behavior shifts. We become more careful, more generous, more eager to be seen as good. Psychologists call this the audience effect, and it explains why people are far more likely to help someone in need, donate to charity, or behave ethically when they feel like they're being watched. Deep inside, we long for approval, and our ancestors survived in tight-knit groups where reputation could mean life or death. This effect runs so deep that even subtle cues can spark it. Studies have shown that simply placing an image of eyes above a donation box causes people to give more money. No real observer is present, but the mind interprets the eyes as a signal someone is watching. In that moment, generosity increases and selfishness retreats. It is not just about kindness, it is about being seen as kind. You felt it yourself. The sudden self-consciousness when you pick up a piece of litter because someone else is nearby. The instinct to offer your seat on a bus only when strangers are watching. The difference between how you act alone and how you act under the gaze of others reveals the ancient truth of our nature. Humans are social creatures, and our moral compass is sharpened by community eyes. Even in a modern world of anonymity, the subtle pressure of observation still awakens the impulse to do what is right, not always because it's right, but because it's noticed. Nostalgia can boost mood and self-esteem. Nostalgia is not just a sentimental longing for the past. It is a lifeline the brain weaves when the present feels uncertain. When you drift back to childhood summers, old friendships, the songs that once defined your youth, or the warmth of a long-forgotten embrace, your mind is doing more than reminiscing. It is repairing. Research shows that nostalgia sparks the release of feel-good chemicals, calming anxiety, softening loneliness, and lifting mood in ways that can feel like medicine for the soul. The past carries a strange kind of power. It reminds you that joy has existed before, that love has touched you, that victories have been won, and that meaning has filled your life in moments that may have seemed ordinary at the time. By revisiting those memories, you reclaim fragments of strength you didn't know were still yours. You realize you have lived, endured, and mattered, and that realization quietly builds your self-esteem. This is why hearing an old song can suddenly warm your chest, why smelling a familiar scent can bring tears, or why revisiting a childhood place can make you feel anchored again. Nostalgia stitches together pieces of your identity, whispering, "You are more than this moment. You are the sum of every beautiful memory you've carried." It is bittersweet, yes, because the past cannot return, but in its sweetness lies healing. Nostalgia doesn't trap you, it fuels you, reminding you that happiness is not gone, only remembered, and if it existed once, it can be created again. People are more likely to believe information if it rhymes. There is something strangely powerful about words that flow together, as if rhyme itself carries authority. A statement wrapped in rhythm feels more truthful, more memorable, and more convincing, even when its content is no more accurate than a plain version. Psychologists call this the rhyme as reason effect, and it exposes how easily our brains mistake beauty for truth. When words sing, we stop questioning them. The rhyme slips past our defenses, making even absurd ideas feel credible. Think of old proverbs and sayings passed down for generations. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. What sobriety conceals, alcohol reveals. No pain, no gain. Their endurance is not only because of wisdom, but because rhyme gave them staying power. We recall them effortlessly, and because they echo in memory, we trust them more deeply. Rhyme feels polished, intentional, and easy to grasp, qualities the brain confuses with accuracy. This effect can be profoundly manipulative. Politicians, advertisers, and even con artists lean on rhyme to cloak their messages in a veil of trust. A slogan that rhymes is remembered, repeated, and believed. A warning in rhyme feels urgent. A promise in rhyme feels reliable. Even when we know logically that rhyme has no bearing on truth, emotionally we are drawn to it, lulled into agreement. Rhyme is not just decoration, it is persuasion. It strikes the brain like music, lowering resistance and amplifying belief. And so, with a simple twist of language, words gain a power that logic alone could never achieve, slipping into memory and leaving us convinced they must be true. People often underestimate how much others think about them. Most people move through life haunted by the belief that they are invisible, that others barely notice them, that their words and actions vanish the moment they leave the room. But psychology tells a very different story. Known as the spotlight effect, this phenomenon reveals that people consistently underestimate how much space they occupy in the minds of others. The truth is unsettling. Your laughter echoes longer than you think. Your mistakes replay in others' memories more often than you imagine, and the smallest details of who you are can linger in ways you may never realize. When you speak up in a meeting, you might assume your words were quickly forgotten. In reality, someone may replay them later, questioning their own perspective in light of yours. When you stumble or say something awkward, you convince yourself everyone has already moved on. But someone might carry that moment in their head for days, not with judgment, but with empathy, amusement, or even admiration for your vulnerability. We are so consumed with our own internal dialogue that we fail to grasp how much of it spills outward and lodges itself in the minds of others. The spotlight effect reminds us that our presence is not as fleeting as we believe. The smile you offered a stranger, the kindness you showed when you thought no one noticed, the offhand comment you barely remember, all of these can ripple outward, shaping how others see you, how they feel, and sometimes even how they act. You are remembered far more often than you think, and your existence casts a brighter light on others' lives than you realize. Music can influence perception of emotions in faces. Music does not just fill the air, it alters the way we see the world itself. When you listen to a piece of music, your brain doesn't confine the emotion to sound alone. It spills into your vision, reshaping the way you interpret even the most neutral of faces. A calm expression may suddenly look sorrowful if you're listening to a melancholic tune, while the same face can appear joyful when paired with an uplifting melody. The notes don't just reach your ears, they color your perception, painting over reality with the hues of emotion. This phenomenon reveals how profoundly interconnected our senses are. The brain is not a collection of isolated systems, but a network that weaves sound, sight, and feeling together into a seamless experience. When music activates emotional centers like the amygdala, it primes us to project those emotions onto whatever we see. A stranger's glance, a loved one's expression, even the frozen face on a photograph. Our interpretation bends to the emotional current created by the music playing in the background. Think of the difference between watching a film scene in silence versus watching it with music swelling beneath it. A single character's face can radiate despair, menace, or hope, depending entirely on the soundtrack. The same truth applies in daily life. The playlist you carry in your headphones is not just shaping your mood, It is shaping your perception of the people around you. Music becomes a lens, subtle yet powerful, that transforms not only how we feel, but how we believe others are feeling too. People tend to blame external factors for failure, but internal ones for success. When success arrives, most people feel an undeniable urge to claim it as proof of their own worth. I worked hard. I earned this. I deserved it. The victory is internalized, absorbed as evidence of talent, intelligence, or resilience. But when failure comes crashing down, the story shifts. Suddenly, it is the boss, the economy, bad timing, or pure bad luck that takes the blame. This is not hypocrisy. It is human psychology at work, a mechanism known as the self-serving bias, designed to protect the fragile core of our self-esteem. Deep down, no one wants to see themselves as incompetent or unworthy. To admit failure as personal feels like opening the door to shame, so the mind builds an escape hatch. It points outward, away from the self, searching for external reasons that explain away the pain. It soothes the ego, even if only temporarily. But when triumph knocks, that same mind clutches tightly, using success as nourishment for identity, as proof of significance in a world that constantly questions it. You can feel this truth in your own life. Think of the times you proudly said, "I earned this," compared to the times you whispered, "It wasn't my fault." Both were stories, crafted not from absolute truth, but from a need to protect yourself. The self-serving bias doesn't just shape how we explain events, it shapes how we see ourselves, building a distorted mirror where failures vanish into shadows and successes glow brighter than reality. It is self-preservation disguised as reason. Humans are wired to detect faces, even in random patterns. The human brain is obsessed with faces. It is the very first thing newborns learn to recognize, the anchor we use to connect with others, and the feature our minds scan for, even when none are truly there. This is why you might see a smiling figure in the clouds, a pair of eyes in the dark knots of a wooden door, or even a face on the surface of the moon. The phenomenon known as pareidolia reveals how deeply wired we are to detect faces, even in random patterns that hold no life at all. This instinct exists because, for our ancestors, the ability to quickly spot a face meant survival. Detecting a predator hidden in the brush, recognizing a member of the tribe from a distance, or seeing an ally in a crowded space could mean the difference between life and death. Our brains became so sensitive to faces that they now overcompensate, conjuring them where they do not exist, rather than risk missing one that does. The fusiform face area, a specialized region of the brain, activates instantly when anything even resembles eyes, a nose, or a mouth. It sparks a sense of recognition so strong that it feels real, even when logic tells us otherwise. And there is something hauntingly emotional about it, seeing humanity where there is none, projecting connection onto the inanimate. It is a reminder that our brains are not machines of perfect accuracy, but survival-driven storytellers. We see faces in shadows not because they are there, but because we cannot bear to miss them if they are. People who talk to themselves often perform better on tasks. What many see as a sign of madness is, in reality, a hidden form of genius. Talking to yourself, whether in whispers or bold declarations, is not a flaw. It is a weapon. When you give voice to your thoughts, you transform the abstract into the tangible, guiding your mind with clarity instead of letting it drown in silent chaos. Athletes do it when they chant their mantras before a game, surgeons murmur steps under their breath, and children naturally narrate their play as they build, explore, and learn. This self-directed speech acts as both coach and compass, keeping focus sharp and mistakes at bay. Psychologists have found that speaking to yourself out loud strengthens memory, boosts problem solving, and sharpens concentration. When you articulate instructions, "I need the keys, wallet, phone, you anchor your attention, reducing the chance of forgetting. When you mutter encouragement, "You've got this, keep pushing," you regulate your emotions, calming the storm of doubt and anxiety. The words may seem small, but to the brain, they are commands, carving a path forward through the noise. Consider how often your inner critic shouts silently inside your head. Now imagine answering back, not in thought, but in voice. That act of speaking reshapes the mental battlefield, turning fear into strategy and confusion into order. Far from being a quirk, self-talk is an ancient, instinctive tool of survival. It is the dialogue between the mind and the self, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful voice you can hear is your own. Our brains can trick us into believing false memories. Memory feels sacred, like a personal archive of truth, but it is far from perfect. The human brain does not record life like a camera. It reconstructs it like a storyteller, filling in gaps, reshaping details, and sometimes fabricating entire moments that never happened. These illusions are called false memories, and they can be so vivid, so emotionally charged, that people will swear on their lives that they are real. You can remember conversations that never occurred, places you never visited, or childhood events that never happened, all because your brain weaves convincing fictions from fragments of suggestion and imagination. Psychologists like Elizabeth Loftus have shown just how fragile memory is. By simply planting subtle cues, researchers have convinced people they once got lost in a shopping mall, shook hands with Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, or saw things that never existed. The shocking part is not that people went along with it, it's that they recalled these memories with conviction, describing details, emotions, and sensory impressions as though they had truly lived them. The brain, once tricked, does not hesitate. It builds falsehoods into your very sense of self. Think about how many family arguments revolve around what really happened. Two people can share the same moment and later remember it in completely different ways, each convinced they hold the truth. False memories remind us that our minds are not keepers of facts, but makers of meaning. The stories we hold on to feel solid, but beneath the surface, memory is fragile, malleable, and terrifyingly easy to deceive. People are more persuasive when they touch others lightly. A single touch, so subtle it may almost go unnoticed, has the power to sway the human mind in ways words alone cannot. Studies show that a gentle brush on the arm, a light pat on the back, or the briefest contact on the shoulder can make people more agreeable, more open, and more willing to comply with requests. It is not the force of the touch that matters, it is the intimacy of it, the primal reminder that another human being is there, real and present. Touch is one of the first senses we develop, and it remains the most direct pathway to emotional influence. From infancy, a parent's touch signals safety, comfort, and love. Those associations do not vanish with age. They linger in the nervous system, making a light touch a silent cue that lowers defenses. In that fleeting moment, the brain interprets the gesture as warmth and connection, releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which fosters trust and compliance. You've likely experienced this without realizing it. The waiter who lightly taps your shoulder and suddenly earns a bigger tip, the friend who reassures you with a hand on your arm and makes their words sink deeper, the stranger who steadies you with a gentle touch and leaves you oddly more receptive to them. The skin becomes the doorway to the mind, bypassing skepticism and logic. But touch is a double-edged sword. Used with care, it creates intimacy, agreement, and human connection. Used manipulatively, it becomes a quiet tool of persuasion, convincing people to say yes before they fully know why. People eat more when distracted, like watching TV. When your mind is absorbed by a glowing screen or an endless scroll, your body's natural signals of hunger and fullness are drowned out. Eating becomes unconscious, automatic, your hand reaching into the bag of chips again and again without you even realizing how much you've taken. Studies show that people consume significantly more food when distracted, especially while watching television, gaming, or scrolling on their phones. The brain is so occupied with processing stimulation that it fails to register the subtle cues from your stomach whispering, "Enough." This happens because eating is not just a physical act, it is also deeply psychological. Normally, the brain and body work together. Hormones like leptin and ghrelin signal satiety and hunger, while attention anchors you to the experience of eating. But when focus shifts elsewhere, the connection is severed. You eat past comfort because you are no longer eating with awareness. It's why a family-sized bowl of popcorn can disappear halfway through a movie, leaving you shocked at the empty container. There's also a darker twist. Entertainment often pairs with mindless snacking as a way to enhance comfort. The brain learns to link pleasure from food with pleasure from distraction, reinforcing the cycle. Over time, this leads not only to overeating, but also to emotional dependence, where distraction becomes the doorway to indulgence. Eating while distracted doesn't just make you consume more, it robs you of the experience of taste. You barely remember what you ate, only that you want more, and so the body keeps asking, the hand keeps reaching, and the cycle repeats until you realize too late that you were full long ago. Anger can temporarily boost creativity. Anger is often seen as destructive, a wildfire that burns bridges, clouds judgment, and poisons relationships. But beneath its flames lies a hidden spark, the power to create. When anger surges, it floods the body with adrenaline, heightens arousal, and forces the brain into a state of raw intensity. This heightened state of emotion can loosen the chains of conventional thinking, breaking down the walls that normally restrict imagination. In that moment, the mind searches for release, and sometimes it finds it not in destruction, but in invention. Research shows that anger, unlike sadness or apathy, pushes people to take action. It is an emotion of energy, of forward motion. That same energy can be channeled into creative pursuits, driving people to paint with boldness, write with fire, or solve problems with a kind of desperate brilliance. History is littered with artists, writers, and visionaries whose most groundbreaking work was born from frustration, rage, or rebellion. Anger, when harnessed, becomes not a chain, but a fuel. Think of the times when you felt furious about an injustice, a betrayal, or a failure. Did you notice how ideas surge, how words spilled faster, how solutions you never considered before suddenly appeared? Anger strips away fear of judgment because the emotion itself is louder than doubt. It opens a door to raw, unfiltered expression, allowing thoughts to emerge that might otherwise remain buried. For a fleeting moment, anger transforms pain into power and chaos into a fierce, creative clarity. People tend to remember negative experiences more vividly. The human mind clings to pain with a grip that joy can rarely match. While happy memories may sparkle, negative ones burn, carving themselves into our consciousness with haunting precision. This imbalance is not a flaw, but an evolutionary survival mechanism. For our ancestors, remembering danger, what hurt, what betrayed, what threatened, was essential to staying alive. The sharp sting of failure or fear taught lessons more powerful than fleeting joy ever could. And so today, your brain still prioritizes pain, storing it with a clarity that outshines most of your brighter moments. Neuroscience reveals that negative experiences activate the amygdala more intensely than positive ones, flooding the brain with stress hormones that stamp the event into long-term memory. That is why heartbreak feels endless, why humiliation resurfaces years later in the middle of the night, and why words spoken in anger echo longer than words spoken in love. It is not that happiness doesn't matter, it's that the mind believes remembering pain is the best way to protect you from future harm. Think of how easily a single insult can outweigh a dozen compliments, or how one betrayal lingers, while countless acts of kindness fade into the background. The vividness of the negative shapes who we are, guiding our choices, fueling our fears, and often chaining us to the past. While joy is light and fleeting, pain is heavy and enduring. The darker moments of life sink deeper into memory, not because we choose them, but because the mind, in its hunger for survival, refuses to let them go. Decisions are influenced by how choices are framed. The way a choice is presented can change everything, even if the options themselves never actually change. Imagine being told a medical procedure has a 90% survival rate. It sounds hopeful, reassuring, almost safe. Now, imagine the same procedure described as having a 10% death rate. The numbers are identical, yet the second feels darker, heavier, more dangerous. This is the framing effect in action, a psychological twist that proves our decisions are often less about logic and more about perception. The human mind craves certainty, yet it is startlingly vulnerable to suggestion. Words shape feelings, and feelings shape choices. Marketers use this relentlessly. A product labeled 95% fat-free sells far better than one labeled 5% fat. Politicians craft their language carefully, describing taxes as contributions or burdens, swaying public opinion with nothing more than framing. Even in personal life, we frame our own experiences, calling a setback a lesson or a failure, alters the way we feel about it and the choices we make moving forward. This influence reaches deeper than most realize. Framing taps into primal instincts of loss and gain, fear and hope. People are naturally loss-averse, more driven to avoid pain than to pursue reward, and framing exploits this bias. A warning framed as "you'll lose" resonates more strongly than a promise framed as "you'll gain." What makes framing so powerful is its invisibility. Most people never notice it happening. They believe they are making rational decisions, unaware that their path was quietly nudged by the way the choice was dressed in words. People who doodle while listening recall more information. The simple act of dragging a pen across paper, sketching swirls, shapes, or meaningless patterns can unlock something powerful in the brain. What looks like distraction to others is often a hidden key to focus. Studies show that people who doodle while listening actually retain more information than those who sit perfectly still, straining to pay attention. The movement occupies just enough mental bandwidth to keep wandering thoughts at bay, leaving the mind anchored to the moment rather than drifting into daydreams. When you doodle, you engage multiple areas of the brain at once: motor control, visual processing, and creativity, all while keeping your ears tuned in. It becomes a rhythm, a background hum that sharpens your attention instead of dulling it. This is why students who doodle in the margins of their notebooks or professionals sketching during meetings often walk away with a clearer memory of what was said than those who try to focus with forced stillness. There is something soothing about doodling too. The repetitive lines and shapes calm the nervous system, reducing anxiety and allowing you to absorb information more naturally. It transforms passive listening into active engagement, weaving memory through motion. And beyond the science, there's a deeper truth. Doodling is a silent rebellion against the rigid idea that focus must look like stillness. In reality, the mind thrives when it moves. Those little spirals, stars, and scribbles are not meaningless. They are memory anchors, quiet evidence that your brain was not wandering away, but rooting itself deeper into what it heard. Humans are more likely to obey authority figures, even against their morals. There is a chilling truth about human behavior that history has revealed again and again. When faced with authority, people often silence their conscience and follow orders they know are wrong. The most famous demonstration of this came from Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments, where ordinary individuals, under the instructions of a scientist in a lab coat, administered what they believed were dangerous electric shocks to strangers. Their hands trembled, their faces twisted in anguish, but still they pressed the button because someone in power told them to. This obedience is not born out of cruelty, but out of deep-rooted conditioning. From childhood, we are taught to respect teachers, follow rules, and yield to those who seem to hold knowledge, status, or control. Authority triggers compliance, not because people lack morality, but because the fear of defiance, rejection, or punishment is often stronger than the quiet voice of conscience. Our evolutionary wiring makes us trust leaders for survival, but that same trust can turn dangerous when authority demands the unthinkable. You've felt this pull before, agreeing with a boss against your better judgment, hesitating to challenge a doctor's decision, or staying silent when a leader's choice made your stomach twist. In those moments, the weight of authority presses down, whispering that obedience is safer than resistance. It is a terrifying reminder of how fragile morality can become in the presence of power. The human instinct to obey runs so deep that, under the right conditions, almost anyone can be pushed to cross lines they swore they never would. People overestimate how unique their opinions are. We like to believe that our thoughts are original, our perspectives rare, and our beliefs born from independent reasoning. Yet psychology shows a humbling truth. Most of us dramatically overestimate the uniqueness of our opinions. This phenomenon, known as the false uniqueness effect, makes us feel like rebels, outsiders, or visionaries, when in reality, our views are often shared by countless others. The sense of being special, of holding a perspective the world has never quite seen before, is more illusion than fact. The roots of this lie in ego and identity. Our minds crave individuality because it reassures us that we are not just another face in the crowd. By convincing ourselves our thoughts are rare, we feed the comforting belief that we stand apart, that we are extraordinary in a world of ordinary people. But when researchers test this by asking people about behaviors, morals, or beliefs, they consistently discover that what feels unique is often common, sometimes even the majority view. The truth is that our special opinions echo through society far more often than we realize. Think of how many times you've shared an idea, only to discover others nodding in agreement, saying they've thought the same thing. Think of how often people post on social media, believing their viewpoint is bold or different, while thousands echo the same sentiment. What feels rare to you is often universal. The mind creates uniqueness because it craves significance, but in reality, we are far more alike in our thoughts than we are different. And sometimes, the opinions we cling to as personal revelations are simply the chorus of humanity speaking through us. Laughter is contagious and strengthens social bonds. Laughter is not just a reaction, it is a signal, a deeply human form of communication that connects people faster than words ever could. When one person laughs, others almost can't help but join in, even if they don't know what's funny. This is because laughter is contagious, spreading like wildfire through groups, syncing people's emotions and uniting them in a shared rhythm of joy. It isn't about the joke, it's about the bond. From an evolutionary perspective, laughter acted as social glue. Our ancestors laughed to signal safety, to show trust, and to reinforce belonging within the group. When laughter ripples through a crowd, it tells every individual, you are part of this, you are safe here, you belong. The brain responds by releasing endorphins, those natural chemicals of pleasure and relief, creating warmth and connection between people who might have been strangers just moments before. Think of the way you've laughed so hard with friends that tears streamed down your face, how in that instant, closeness deepened without effort, or how hearing someone else's uncontrollable laughter pulled a smile from your lips, even if you had no idea what sparked it. In that moment, walls fall away. Laughter builds intimacy in romance, trust in friendships, and unity in entire groups. It disarms tension, dissolves conflict, and creates memories that bind people together. To laugh with someone is to share more than amusement. It is to share humanity itself, to wordlessly whisper, "We are in this together." People are more likely to be generous when observed. Generosity, for all its beauty, often blooms brightest under the watchful eye of others. Studies reveal that people are significantly more likely to donate money, share resources, or act kindly when they know someone is watching. The presence of an observer transforms giving into a performance, one that polishes reputation and signals virtue. It is not always conscious. Our brains are wired to crave approval, to show others that we are good, trustworthy, and worthy of belonging. Generosity then becomes both a gift to others and a strategy for survival. This instinct is ancient. In small tribes, survival depended on cooperation, and those seen as selfish risked exile. To give when others were watching was to prove loyalty, to secure safety, to earn allies. That evolutionary pull still tugs at us today, which is why even something as subtle as an image of watching eyes above a donation jar can dramatically increase contributions. The gaze, real or imagined, nudges us toward kindness. But there's a haunting irony in this truth. Many acts of generosity are not born solely from compassion, but from the desire to be seen as compassionate. We are more likely to help when the world is watching. Yet, in solitude, our hands sometimes remain still. The human heart craves the applause of kindness almost as much as the act itself. Even so, this awareness does not strip generosity of its power. Whether fueled by empathy or by the longing for approval, the outcome is the same. Someone in need receives, and sometimes the eyes upon us are what awaken the better angels we forget to show when no one is there. People tend to align their speech pace with conversation partners. When two people talk, something extraordinary happens beneath the surface of the words. Without even realizing it, we begin to adjust our rhythm, our tone, and even the speed of our speech to match the person in front of us. If they speak quickly, our pace quickens. If they slow down, we naturally soften and mirror their cadence. This phenomenon, known as speech convergence, is not random. It is a subconscious act of bonding, a way of saying, "I am like you, I belong with you." At its core, this is about connection. Humans are social creatures wired to seek harmony, and one of the deepest forms of harmony is rhythm. When your speech matches another's, it signals understanding, comfort, and trust. It makes conversations flow more effortlessly, building rapport without either person fully realizing why. That is why friends often start to sound alike after years together, and why romantic partners sometimes adopt each other's phrases and intonations. Language becomes not just a tool for communication, but a reflection of closeness. But this instinct has a darker undertone too. We don't just adjust to those we love, we also adapt to those we fear, those we want to impress, or those whose approval we crave. It is survival written into speech. In high-stakes situations, like job interviews or confrontations, our voices unconsciously shift, seeking acceptance through mimicry. It's a reminder that words are not just spoken, they are danced. Every pause, every tempo change is part of an unspoken choreography, pulling people closer together, one mirrored beat at a time. The brain processes images faster than text. The human brain is wired for vision, and nothing reveals this more powerfully than its ability to process images in an instant, long before it can decipher words. Studies suggest that the brain can identify and interpret images in as little as 13 milliseconds, while reading requires a slower, step-by-step decoding of symbols into meaning. Long before written language existed, our ancestors relied on sight for survival, spotting predators, reading faces, and navigating landscapes. This primal priority has remained, giving pictures the power to strike us faster, and deeper than any string of text ever could. Images bypass much of the brain's analytical process, plunging directly into the emotional and associative centers. A single photograph of a grieving mother or a joyful child can stir feelings more intensely than pages of written description. This is why advertising thrives on visuals, why news outlets rely on shocking images, and why social media is dominated by photos and videos rather than paragraphs of text. Our minds are hungry for imagery because it delivers meaning with immediacy and emotional weight. Think about how you remember things. You may struggle to recall the exact words of a story, but you can effortlessly summon the picture of where you were, what someone looked like, the colors, the shapes, the expressions. Words fade, images burn themselves into the mind. This is why a single snapshot can tell a story that thousands of words cannot capture. The brain does not wait to analyze. It feels, reacts, and remembers, all in a fraction of a second, proving that seeing is not just believing, but understanding. People's handwriting can reflect their personality traits. Every stroke of the pen is more than just ink on paper. It is a silent signature of the mind. Handwriting, in its loops, slants, and spacing, often mirrors the unique patterns of personality that shape who we are. Large, bold letters may suggest confidence, even dominance, while small, precise writing often reflects focus, introversion, or meticulous attention to detail. A quick rush script can reveal impatience or energy, while wide spacing between words may signal independence and a need for freedom. The subconscious bleeds through every curve and line. This is the essence of graphology, the study of handwriting as a reflection of character. Though debated in science, countless studies and observations suggest that handwriting can be an intimate map of temperament and emotion. When someone writes, their hand is guided not only by motor skills, but by subtle cues from mood, personality, and even state of mind in that very moment. It is why signatures become bolder when people feel powerful, or shakier when they are nervous. Think about the last handwritten note you received. You likely felt something before you even read the words. The style itself communicated gentleness in soft loops, rigidity in sharp angles, warmth in rounded curves. Unlike typed words, handwriting carries a piece of the writer's soul, making it both personal and revealing. Each page of writing is a portrait, not of what someone says, but of who they are. In the slant of the letters and the pressure of the pen lies a hidden story, whispering the secrets of personality through strokes only the observant can truly hear. People are more motivated by potential loss than by potential gain. The human mind clings to what it has with a fierceness far greater than the desire to gain something new. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it reveals a sobering truth. The fear of losing drives us harder than the hope of winning. Losing $100 hurts more than the joy of gaining $100 ever pleases us. The pain of loss is sharper, more immediate, more haunting, and so our behavior bends toward protecting what we have, even when opportunity for gain is right before us. This bias is deeply rooted in our evolutionary wiring. For our ancestors, survival meant guarding resources with relentless vigilance. Food loss was not easily replaced. Shelter abandoned could mean death. Over thousands of years, our brains learned to scream louder at threats of loss than at whispers of gain. That wiring still dominates our decisions today, from the way we invest money to the way we cling to toxic relationships, fearing the emptiness of letting go more than the promise of finding better. Marketers exploit this fear constantly, crafting phrases like limited time only, while supplies last, and don't miss out. These words strike at the primal terror of loss, triggering urgency that hope alone cannot spark. We rush to buy, to secure, to protect, not because we truly need, but because we dread the ache of absence. Loss looms larger in the human mind than gain, distorting judgment, steering choices and holding us hostage to what might be taken away. It is not desire that rules us most powerfully. It is fear of losing what we already hold in our hands. Short exposure to nature can reduce stress. Even a brief encounter with nature has the power to quiet the storm inside the mind. Just a few minutes of walking beneath trees, hearing the rustle of leaves, or feeling the warmth of sunlight on your skin can lower blood pressure, slow the heart, and silence the constant hum of stress. It doesn't require a week-long retreat into the mountains. Sometimes standing barefoot on grass, watching clouds drift, or listening to birdsong is enough to shift the body into calm. Science reveals why this happens. When we immerse ourselves in natural settings, even briefly, our cortisol levels drop, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's relaxation mode, activates. This is the opposite of the constant fight-or-flight state triggered by screens, deadlines, and noise. Our ancient ancestors lived in these landscapes, and somewhere deep in our wiring, the body remembers. The brain interprets trees, rivers, and open skies as safe environments, allowing us to breathe deeper, think clearer, and release the invisible weight we carry. Think of how your body responds when you step outside after a long day indoors. The air feels different, fuller, your shoulders drop, your chest expands, and the chatter of your mind slows. Even hospital patients recover faster when they have a window view of greenery instead of concrete. Children calm down quicker when allowed to play outside. Adults find clarity in a simple walk through a park. Nature does not ask questions or demand explanations. It simply restores, wrapping the mind in a silence that heals. In those fleeting moments, stress loosens its grip, replaced by something older, gentler, and profoundly human. People find symmetrical faces more attractive. Beauty has always captivated human attention, but beneath the surface of preference lies a quiet truth. People are drawn to symmetry. When we look at a face, even without realizing it, our brains are scanning for balance. The alignment of eyes, the evenness of features, the harmony of proportions. Symmetry signals health, stability, and genetic strength, qualities that have been deeply ingrained in our evolutionary instincts as markers of a suitable partner. To our subconscious mind, a symmetrical face whispers survival and vitality. Research shows that symmetrical faces activate reward centers in the brain more strongly than asymmetrical ones, creating feelings of pleasure and attraction. This preference is not simply cultural. It appears across nations and histories, suggesting it is rooted in human biology. Evolutionary psychologists argue that symmetry may indicate good genes, as developmental stability often reflects resilience against illness and environmental stress. In a world where reproduction and survival were once uncertain, being able to identify health at a glance was an invaluable advantage. Think of the faces that captivate you. Often, it is not about perfection, but about harmony, the way features balance effortlessly, creating a sense of ease when you look at them. Even subtle imbalances can make a face feel striking, but it is symmetry that creates the quiet pull of attraction. This is why filters that subtly adjust facial symmetry on social media can make people appear more appealing, and why our gaze lingers longer on balanced features. The truth is simple yet profound. Our brains are wired to find beauty where order exists, and symmetry is the silent language of allure. People are influenced by the opinions of perceived experts. The human mind is wired to seek guidance, especially when facing uncertainty. When an individual labeled as an expert speaks, their words often carry more weight than evidence, logic, or even personal experience. A white coat, a title, a confident tone, all become symbols of authority, triggering a deep-rooted instinct to trust those who appear to know more. This phenomenon is called the authority bias, and it shapes far more of our decisions than we care to admit. From childhood, survival depended on learning from those who knew better. Children followed parents, tribes followed leaders, patients followed healers. That instinct still lingers, which is why people often defer to experts even when their own intuition disagrees. Studies show that when an expert's opinion is presented, people's brains reduce their own critical thinking, as if outsourcing judgment to the trusted source. This surrender of thought can be comforting, but also dangerous. You see it in medicine. When patients accept treatments they barely understand because a doctor recommended them. You see it in finance, where investors trust advisors over their own doubts. You see it in everyday life, when someone follows advice simply because it comes from a person with status, credentials, or charisma. The frightening truth is that expertise doesn't always equal correctness, yet perception is often stronger than reality. When someone appears to know, when they project confidence and authority, the human brain leans in, listens, and obeys. The power of perceived expertise is not just in knowledge, it is in the control it holds over those desperate to believe in it. People who sleep better tend to have stronger willpower. Willpower is not an endless resource. It is a fragile flame that burns brighter when the body and mind are fully restored. Sleep, more than anything else, fuels that flame. Those who sleep deeply and consistently find themselves better able to resist temptation, make disciplined choices, and push through discomfort. Meanwhile, the sleep-deprived crumble faster, giving in to cravings, distractions, and impulses they might normally resist. The difference is not about character, but about biology. During sleep, especially in the deep stages, the brain clears away toxins, resets its emotional circuitry, and restores the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making and self-control. Without this nightly reset, the brain becomes like an exhausted muscle, too weak to hold the line against impulses. That is why sleepless nights so often lead to binges of food, procrastination, reckless spending, or snapping in anger. It is not that the person has less willpower, it is that their brain has been stripped of the strength to use it. Sleep also stabilizes emotions, making it easier to handle stress without collapsing into self-destructive choices. A rested mind can pause, evaluate, and choose wisely, while a tired one lunges for whatever provides immediate relief. This is why good sleepers often appear more disciplined, more focused, and more resilient. They are not superhuman, they are simply recharged. The cruel irony is that in the moments we most need self-control, during stress, heartbreak, or major challenges, sleep is often the first thing we sacrifice. Yet it is sleep itself that quietly determines whether our willpower will be fragile as glass or strong as steel when life demands the most of us. Color influences mood and behavior. Colors are not just seen with the eyes, they are felt with the heart, absorbed by the body, and etched into the mind. Every shade carries a hidden language, whispering to our emotions in ways we cannot always explain. Red can make the pulse quicken, stirring feelings of urgency, passion, or even aggression. Blue slows the breath, calming the nervous system and inviting trust. Yellow radiates energy, sparking optimism and joy, while darker tones like gray or black can cloak us in seriousness, melancholy, or authority. Without a single word, color manipulates mood, shifting our state of mind as effortlessly as a song. Marketers and designers understand this well. That is why fast food chains drench their logos in reds and yellows, colors that ignite hunger and speed. Hospitals and spas lean on blues and greens to soothe the mind, simulating the safety of sky and forest. Even in daily life, the colors we wear become armor for the emotions we want to project. A bright dress can lift confidence, a dark suit can command respect, and a splash of white can symbolize renewal. Whether we are aware of it or not, color is a silent force shaping how others see us and how we see ourselves. Think about the last time you entered a room bathed in warm light versus one drowned in fluorescent glare. Your body responded instantly, without permission. This is the quiet power of color. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to emotion. We do not just live in color, we are moved, persuaded, and transformed by it every single day. People are more creative when slightly tired. Creativity often blooms in the spaces where logic begins to fade. When you are slightly tired, not exhausted, but past the peak of sharp focus, your brain loosens its grip on rigid patterns of thinking. The strict rules and filters that normally govern your thoughts weaken, and suddenly, connections that seemed impossible in full alertness begin to emerge. This is why brilliant ideas often strike late at night, in the shower, or during the dreamy haze just before sleep. Fatigue dulls precision, but frees imagination. Neuroscience suggests that when the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for judgment, inhibition, and control, slows down, other networks fire more freely. The result is unconventional thinking, where the mind wanders into unusual territories, linking concepts that would normally stay apart. That wandering state, often dismissed as distraction, is fertile ground for innovation. In fact, history is filled with inventors, writers, and artists who credited their best insights to moments of fatigue or daydreaming rather than structured concentration. Think of the times an answer came to you not while working furiously at your desk, but when lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, or idly walking after a long day. In those tired moments, your mind drifts, and within that drift lies discovery. While fatigue can cripple focus and memory, in small doses, it lowers the barriers that keep imagination chained. Slight tiredness bends the rules of thought, inviting ideas that sharp, disciplined thinking would have silenced. Creativity often whispers when logic is too tired to shout. People often misjudge how long tasks will take. The human brain is notoriously poor at predicting time. We convince ourselves that a project will be finished in a day, a chore will take only a few minutes, or a goal will be reached by next week. Yet reality almost always proves otherwise. This tendency is known as the planning fallacy, and it stems from our deep desire to believe we are faster, more efficient, and more capable than we actually are. We see the path ahead through rose-tinted glass, blind to the detours, distractions, and obstacles that inevitably appear. The roots of this lie in optimism. We remember our best moments of productivity and assume every future attempt will unfold the same way, conveniently forgetting the times we were slowed down by fatigue, interruptions, or unexpected complexity. The mind simplifies what lies ahead, reducing it to an idealized version where effort is minimal and success feels just around the corner. But when the clock runs out, we are left scrambling, frustrated, and often guilty for failing to meet our own expectations. Think of the last time you said, "I'll just do this quickly," only to find yourself hours later still trapped in the task. Or the way deadlines creep up even when you swore you had plenty of time. It isn't laziness, it's miscalculation. Our brains lie to us, whispering timelines that feel comforting but are rarely true. The cost is more than wasted hours. It's broken promises, stress, and a cycle of underestimating ourselves again and again, trapped in the illusions of time we create. People tend to prefer round numbers. Numbers are not just cold, lifeless figures to the human brain. They carry weight, emotion, and meaning. And among them, round numbers hold a special kind of power. A finish line at exactly 100 feels more complete than 99. A price at $10 feels cleaner, more satisfying than $9.87. People celebrate their 30th birthday with more significance than their 29th, and hitting 1,000 followers feels like a victory in a way that 997 never does. Round numbers soothe the mind with their symmetry, their sense of closure, their illusion of perfection. This preference stems from our deep craving for order in a chaotic world. Round numbers feel like milestones, easy markers that give structure to our stories. They create a sense of accomplishment, as though something has been fully completed. Marathon runners will push themselves to reach 20 miles rather than stop at 19.8. Students will study to the top of the hour, and investors are thrilled when a stock passes $100, even though nothing fundamentally changes between 99 and 100. Marketers and advertisers know this well, using round prices to convey fairness, completeness, and simplicity, while using slightly off numbers like $9.99 to suggest bargains. Roundness becomes not just mathematical, but psychological, manipulating the way we perceive value and achievement. There's something deeply human in this obsession. In a life full of messy edges and unfinished stories, round numbers give the illusion of control. They become small islands of certainty in the storm of randomness, places where our minds can rest and say, "This is whole, this is complete, this feels right." Eye contact increases intimacy and connection. The eyes are not just windows to the soul, they are bridges. When two people lock eyes, something ancient and electric happens, a current of unspoken truth that words cannot replicate. Sustained eye contact releases oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that floods a parent gazing at their newborn or lovers staring into each other's eyes. It creates a sense of closeness, so powerful that even strangers can feel an almost unbearable connection after holding each other's gaze. Eye contact does not just acknowledge presence, it affirms existence. In conversation, a glance can mean more than 1,000 words. The fleeting look that lingers a moment too long can ignite desire. The steady gaze in the midst of chaos can ground someone in safety. Even the discomfort of eye contact reveals its power. Why else would we look away so quickly when we feel exposed? To meet another's eyes is to risk being truly seen and to truly see them in return. That intimacy can be terrifying, but it is also irresistible. Psychologists have found that eye contact increases trust, persuasion, and emotional resonance. Negotiators who maintain eye contact appear more confident. Friends who share it feel more understood. Couples who practice it often deepen their intimacy beyond words. And yet, it is fragile, too much, too intense, and it shifts from intimacy to intrusion. That is the delicate balance of the gaze. It can draw us closer than touch, pierce us deeper than speech, and linger in memory long after the eyes themselves have turned away. People often buy items based on emotion, not logic. When we think of shopping, we like to imagine ourselves as rational decision makers, carefully weighing pros and cons, comparing prices, and choosing what makes the most sense. But the truth is far more primal. Most purchases are driven not by logic, but by emotion. That surge of excitement when you see a sleek new phone, the warm comfort of buying something that reminds you of childhood, the subtle pride of owning a brand others admire. These feelings guide your choices far more than statistics, warranties, or technical details ever could. Neuroscience shows that when we shop, the emotional centers of the brain light up before the rational ones. The limbic system whispers, "I want this," long before the prefrontal cortex can argue, "Do I really need it?" Marketers know this well, which is why commercials don't flood you with numbers. They show smiling families, glamorous lifestyles, or inspiring stories that tug at your heart. You aren't just buying a product, you're buying a feeling, an identity, a promise of who you might become if you own it. Think of impulse buys, the shoes you didn't plan to purchase, the gadget you didn't need, the snack you grabbed at the checkout. Logic would have said no, but the spark of desire overpowered reason. Even expensive purchases, like cars or houses, often hinge on how they feel, not just their utility. People rarely admit it, but emotion is the invisible hand guiding wallets. Every purchase is, in some way, an attempt to feel joy, safety, belonging, or status. We buy not things, but the emotions we hope they deliver. People are more likely to help attractive individuals. Beauty has a power that goes beyond admiration. It bends behavior, softens judgment, and opens doors that might otherwise remain closed. Studies reveal a striking truth. Attractive individuals are more likely to receive help from strangers, secure leniency in courtrooms, and even be hired for jobs, regardless of their actual qualifications. This phenomenon, known as the halo effect, shows how physical appearance can distort our perception, making us assume that beauty is paired with kindness, intelligence, and trustworthiness. At its core, this bias is rooted in evolution. Our ancestors equated attractiveness with health, fertility, and good genetics, and so the instinct to favor the beautiful became deeply embedded in human psychology. Even today, when we pride ourselves on logic and fairness, those ancient impulses whisper in the background. An attractive stranger drops something, and we're quicker to pick it up. A beautiful smile asks for help, and we lean in without hesitation. You've likely felt this yourself without realizing it. The subtle pull to be kinder, more patient, or more generous with someone you found physically appealing. It is not just admiration, it is unconscious bias shaping your actions. This creates a world where beauty grants invisible privileges, where the attractive are lifted higher, while others fight harder for the same kindness. The truth is unsettling. Help is not always given to those who need it most, but to those who fit society's image of worthiness. Beauty becomes a silent currency, traded for favors, compassion, and opportunities, leaving the less desirable unseen in moments when they may need help the most. Humans can only focus deeply for about 20 minutes at a time. The human brain is not built for endless concentration. It works in bursts, not marathons. On average, people can only maintain deep, undivided focus for about 20 minutes before the mind begins to drift. No matter how determined you are, your attention naturally frays, your thoughts wander, and your productivity slips into distraction. This isn't weakness, it's biology. The brain craves rhythm, oscillating between effort and rest, engagement and pause, as though it knows the mind cannot burn hot forever without breaking. In those first 20 minutes, you enter a state of heightened concentration where your senses sharpen and your mind locks onto the task before you. But slowly, like a candle sputtering, that clarity begins to dim. Neural fatigue sets in, and the brain starts searching for novelty, pulling you toward anything easier, lighter, or more rewarding than the challenge at hand. It's why you suddenly feel the urge to check your phone, grab a snack, or simply daydream. This cycle is ancient. For early humans, constant vigilance was impossible. Scanning for threats in short bursts was enough to survive. That same rhythm now shapes modern focus, dictating the way we study, work, and create. Interestingly, when people honor this limit, working in 20-minute sprints followed by short breaks, they often achieve far more than if they force themselves to grind without pause. Deep focus, then, is not a straight line but a wave. It rises, peaks, and falls, demanding renewal before it can rise again. To fight it is to fight your own wiring. To embrace it is to harness the true tempo of the human mind. People imitate accents subconsciously. Without even noticing, the human brain slips into mimicry. When you spend time with someone who speaks differently, your own accent begins to bend, shift, and echo theirs, as though your voice is reaching out to meet theirs halfway. This subconscious imitation, known as the chameleon effect, is not about mockery. It is about survival, belonging, and connection. The brain detects differences in rhythm and tone, then softens those differences by weaving them into your own speech, creating an invisible bond of familiarity. Evolution shaped this instinct long before we were aware of it. To our ancestors, being accepted by the tribe was a matter of life and death. Those who blended in were safer, more trusted, and more likely to survive. The unconscious mirroring of accents was, and still is, a silent handshake, a signal that says, I am like you, you can trust me. Even today, It works its magic in small ways. You may notice yourself adopting the drawl of a Southern friend, the clipped cadence of a foreign colleague, or even the slang of a new group after only a few hours together. What is eerie is how automatic it is. You don't decide to do it, and often you don't even realize you're doing it, but others notice, and on a subconscious level, it pulls them closer to you. This is why conversations feel warmer when rhythms align, and why strangers can feel like friends in an instant. The voice bends because the heart craves belonging, and in that subtle shift of sound, connection silently blooms. Gratitude can improve mental health and happiness. Gratitude is more than a polite thank you. It is a rewiring of the mind, a shift in focus that transforms how we experience life. When you practice gratitude, you train your brain to notice abundance instead of lack, to recognize blessings instead of obsessing over flaws. Psychologists have found that people who regularly express gratitude sleep better, experience less depression, and feel more optimistic about their future. Gratitude acts like a lens, softening the sharp edges of stress and magnifying the small joys that often go unnoticed. At a biological level, gratitude floods the brain with dopamine and serotonin, the same chemicals tied to feelings of pleasure and well-being. It activates regions of the brain associated with empathy and reward, reinforcing a positive feedback loop that makes you more likely to feel good the more you practice it. Something as simple as writing down 3 things you are grateful for each day can begin to reshape your mental landscape, gradually replacing anxiety with calm and despair with hope. Think of the moments when gratitude has struck you suddenly, the overwhelming relief after a health scare, the warmth of realizing someone loves you unconditionally, the quiet comfort of food on the table after hunger. In those moments, gratitude doesn't just make you happier, it grounds you, reminds you that even in pain, there is light. It is a practice of survival and resilience, one that turns ordinary days into extraordinary ones. Gratitude does not erase suffering, but it gives you the strength to carry it with grace and the vision to see beyond it. People remember emotionally intense dreams better. Dreams are fragile, slipping through the cracks of memory the moment we wake, yet some linger, etched so vividly that years later we can still recall their colors, their voices, their overwhelming sensations. What separates these lasting dreams from the ones that vanish in seconds is emotion. When a dream strikes the heart, whether with terror, desire, grief, or joy, it carves itself deeper into memory, refusing to be forgotten. The brain treats emotional dreams much like it does real experiences. During sleep, the amygdala, the brain's emotional epicenter, is highly active. When fear jolts you awake in a nightmare, or when a dream of love leaves you aching long after sunrise, your brain stamps the memory with emotional weight, signaling, "This mattered." This is why nightmares replay in haunting detail, why erotic dreams burn into memory, and why dreams of loss can feel as painful as waking life itself. You felt it, the dream where you were running, heart pounding, chased by shadows, or the one where you reunited with someone you lost, so real that waking felt like another death. These are not just stories of the night, they are emotional imprints strong enough to survive consciousness. Ordinary dreams dissolve like mist, but emotional dreams linger, blurring the boundary between the world of sleep and the world of waking. They remind us that the mind, even at rest, is not passive. It feels, it suffers, it exults. And in those feelings, memory takes root, anchoring the dream as though it truly happened. Humans crave social belonging as much as food. The hunger for connection runs just as deep as the hunger for bread. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain processes social rejection and isolation in the same regions that process physical hunger and pain. To be cut off from others is not just lonely. It is starving a need as essential as eating. Belonging is not a luxury. It is survival. From the moment we are born, crying out to be held. Our nervous system is wired to seek the warmth of others. Without it, we wither, no matter how well fed our bodies may be. In our evolutionary past, the tribe meant life. To be accepted was to be protected. To be rejected was to face predators and starvation alone. That ancient truth still shapes us today, which is why exclusion can feel unbearable, why betrayal feels like a wound, and why loneliness corrodes the spirit like hunger gnaws at the body. People will go to great lengths to fit in, changing their behavior, silencing their opinions, even betraying their own values because the cost of not belonging feels too heavy to bear. The craving for connection explains why love, friendship, and community bring a satisfaction that food or wealth alone cannot touch. A meal eaten in solitude fills the stomach but leaves the heart hollow, while one shared with others nourishes something deeper. To belong is to be seen, heard, and valued, and when we are starved of it, the ache becomes physical. Just as the body cries out when deprived of food, the soul cries out when deprived of human connection, and both hungers can consume us if left unsatisfied. Stress can impair memory retrieval. Stress is a thief of clarity. In moments when you need your mind most, an exam, a crucial presentation, an emergency, stress often robs you of the very memories you are desperate to recall. You know the answer, the name, the detail. It lingers just out of reach, locked away behind the fog that stress creates. This is not weakness, it is biology. When the body is under pressure, cortisol floods the brain, hijacking the hippocampus, the region responsible for retrieving memories. The pathways remain, but stress builds a barricade, making access difficult, sometimes impossible. This is why soldiers can forget training under fire, why students blank out on tests, why witnesses struggle to recall details after traumatic events. Stress narrows focus to survival, funneling energy toward immediate threat response and away from reflection or recollection. Your body screams, fight, flee, or freeze, and in doing so, it silences the softer voice of memory. But stress does more than block the past. It distorts it. Memories pulled under stress often come back fragmented, incomplete, or even inaccurate, shaped by adrenaline and fear. The mind becomes a shaky storyteller, filling in gaps with guesses, sometimes creating false recollections that feel vividly true. You felt this yourself, the moment you walk away from pressure and suddenly remember everything you had struggled to recall. Stress lifted, the barricade falls, and memory flows again. The truth is simple yet haunting. Your mind holds the answers, but in the grip of stress, the door to them is sealed shut. People are more persuasive when speaking faster. The speed of your words can be as powerful as the words themselves. When someone speaks quickly, their message often carries an air of confidence, urgency, and authority that makes others more likely to believe and agree. Rapid speech floods the listener's mind with information, leaving little room for doubt or counter-argument, and the pace itself communicates certainty, as if the speaker has no time for hesitation because the truth is already clear. This phenomenon explains why fast-talking salespeople, charismatic leaders, and skilled debaters often sway crowds with ease. Psychologists have found that faster speech reduces the chances of listeners picking apart flaws in the message. The human brain struggles to analyze deeply while keeping up with rapid information, so instead, it relies on instinct, tone, and emotion. When a message is delivered quickly, it feels more convincing, as if the speaker has rehearsed it, mastered it, and believes it beyond question. In contrast, slower, halting speech can suggest doubt, weakness, or uncertainty, even if the words themselves are solid. Think about how you react to different speakers. The politician whose voice races with passion stirs you more than the monotone lecturer. The friend who speaks quickly in excitement pulls you into their enthusiasm, making you nod before you've had time to reflect. Speed does not just carry words, it carries energy, conviction, and momentum. Listeners often mistake that momentum for truth, making them more likely to be persuaded. The rhythm of fast speech bypasses skepticism, and in its rush, the message becomes not just heard, but believed. People's moods can be influenced by those around them. Emotions are not as private as we like to believe. They ripple outward, infecting others in ways we cannot always control. When you step into a room filled with laughter, your chest lightens. When you encounter someone radiating anger, your pulse quickens. This phenomenon, known as emotional contagion, shows that moods spread like invisible viruses, transferring silently from one person to the next until entire groups begin to feel the same emotional pulse. At the core of this lies empathy and mirror neurons, those tiny cells in the brain that fire not only when we act, but when we witness others acting. When you see someone smile, your brain lights up as though you were smiling yourself. When you see someone's shoulders slump with grief, your body echoes the heaviness. Without words, emotions pass from one nervous system to another, weaving invisible threads of shared experience. Think of how one person's laughter in a crowd can set off a wave of joy, or how a single person's bitterness can poison an entire gathering. You've likely felt it in your own life, how spending time with optimistic people left you buzzing with energy, while being around negativity drained you, even if nothing was said aloud. Moods are contagious because humans are wired for connection. To belong, to survive, we learn to mirror and absorb the emotions of those around us. But in that gift lies danger, because while joy can lift us higher, despair can just as easily drag us under, carried silently from one soul to another. People prefer familiar brands even without superior quality. When faced with a choice, most people instinctively reach for what they already know. A brand they've seen before, a logo they've passed 100 times, a name that feels safe, even when the alternative is cheaper, fresher, or higher in quality. Familiarity often wins. This is not logic, it is psychology. The human brain equates familiarity with safety, comfort, and trust. In a world full of uncertainty, choosing what feels known is less about the product itself and more about calming the mind's silent fears of risk. Marketers have long understood this, which is why repetition is the lifeblood of advertising. The more we are exposed to a brand, the more real and reliable it feels. This is called the mere exposure effect, a phenomenon where simply seeing something repeatedly makes us like it more. A soda brand, a cereal box, a pair of shoes, all become stamped into memory until choosing them feels as natural as breathing. What makes this even more haunting is that our loyalty often has nothing to do with quality. Blind taste tests repeatedly show people failing to distinguish between well-known brands and generic ones. Yet when labels are visible, the familiar brand almost always tastes better. The experience isn't in the product, it's in the expectation. Familiarity soothes us because it promises stability in a chaotic world. A familiar brand is more than an object. It becomes a companion, a reassurance, a subtle whisper that says, "You know me, you can trust me." And for that reason, we buy not with reason, but with recognition. People are more likely to cheat when they feel anonymous. When the mask of anonymity falls over a person, morality often begins to blur. Hidden from recognition, free from accountability, individuals are far more likely to bend rules, break promises, and indulge in behaviors they would never dare if their identity were exposed. Psychologists call this de-individuation, a state where the sense of self fades and responsibility dissolves into the shadows. It is why cheating spikes when no one is watching, why online trolls spew venom behind faceless avatars, and why people commit acts in darkness that they would never attempt in the light. The moment we believe no one will know, the brain begins negotiating. A student whispers answers during a test, convinced the teacher won't catch it. A worker pads an expense report, telling themselves it's harmless. A stranger steals from a self-checkout, hiding behind the blur of cameras. These are not random slips of morality, they are calculated risks, born from the intoxicating sense of invisibility. Anonymity whispers, you won't get caught. No one will judge you. You are free. But freedom without identity is dangerous. The same person who radiates kindness in public may act cruelly when cloaked in secrecy, not because their values vanish, but because the social mirror that holds them accountable has shattered. Anonymity doesn't change who we are. It reveals what we are willing to do when we believe no one is looking. And in those hidden moments, when conscience battles with secrecy, far too many choose the path they would never dare to walk in the light of recognition. People are more likely to lie over the phone than face to face. The truth feels heavier when spoken into someone's eyes. Face-to-face interactions carry a raw intensity. Every flicker of expression, every pause, every twitch of the body is visible, making lies harder to conceal. Over the phone, that weight is lifted. The absence of direct eye contact and physical presence creates a veil of distance, a sense of safety that emboldens deception. Without the silent accountability of another person's gaze, people feel freer to bend the truth. Studies reveal that individuals lie more frequently and more comfortably when speaking over the phone than in person. It is easier to mask nervousness when no one can see the sweat on your brow or the tremble in your hands. Tone can still betray us, but it is far less damning than a betrayed expression or a fidgeting body. The phone becomes a shield, protecting the liar from immediate judgment and reducing the fear of being caught in the act. Think of the excuses people give. I'm almost there when they haven't left the house. I didn't see your message when they ignored it. I'm fine when they're breaking inside. Over the phone, these lies slide more easily, softened by distance. In person, they would collide with scrutiny, with eyes that search for truth in silence. The human need to protect image and avoid confrontation finds fertile ground in the telephone's disembodied voice. Stripped of the vulnerability of presence, people surrender more quickly to dishonesty, proving that sometimes the truth depends not only on what we say, but on where and how we say it. Gossip strengthens group bonds. Gossip, often whispered with guilt and dismissed as petty, holds a power far deeper than most realize. It is not simply idle chatter about someone who isn't present. It is a social glue, binding people together through shared secrets, judgments, and laughter. When two people exchange gossip, they are not just trading information, they are building trust, signaling loyalty, and quietly reinforcing their place within the group. From an evolutionary standpoint, gossip was survival. In small tribes, knowing who could be trusted, who had betrayed others, or who held power meant the difference between safety and danger. Stories about others became the first social currency, allowing people to navigate alliances and avoid threats without facing them head-on. Even today, when life is less about survival and more about belonging, gossip continues to serve the same function. It clarifies social rules and strengthens bonds between those who share it. You felt this yourself, the intimate thrill of a whispered secret, the instant closeness when someone confides in you, the way gossip creates an us and a them. It doesn't matter if the story is trivial or exaggerated. What matters is the connection. The act of gossiping signals, I trust you with this, and the listener's agreement silently responds, I'm with you. Of course, gossip has its poison. It can destroy reputations and fracture communities, but beneath its darker side lies its enduring function. It unites. By gossiping, people affirm their place within the social circle, weaving invisible threads of loyalty that hold groups together more tightly than they realize. People are more likely to clap longer if others clap. Applause is not just noise, it is a ritual of belonging, a collective heartbeat that pulls us into rhythm with those around us. When one person claps, it's simply sound, but when many join in, it becomes an invisible pressure, compelling us to match their energy, their timing, their length. Studies of audience behavior reveal that applause rarely ends when the performance does. It ends when enough people decide it should. Until then, hands keep striking, not always from genuine enthusiasm, but from the subtle command of the group. This is the psychology of social contagion. Humans are wired to mirror each other, and in moments of collective behavior, we surrender our individuality to the current of the crowd. The longer others clap, the harder it becomes to be the first one to stop. Stopping feels like dissent, like separation, like standing apart when your body craves to remain inside the unity. And so you keep clapping, sometimes long after the performance has faded from your mind. Think of political rallies where applause roars endlessly, or concerts where the crowd claps in rhythm until their hands ache. Each individual knows they could stop, but together they create a loop of reinforcement, no one wanting to be the one who breaks the spell. The sound itself becomes intoxicating, a wave of shared emotion that carries everyone with it. Clapping longer is not about the performance alone. It is about connection, the primal need to move as one. In those moments, applause stops being personal and becomes communal, an act of unity disguised as noise. Stress can actually increase focus in small amounts. Stress is often painted as the villain, a relentless force that drains the body and clouds the mind. But in small, measured doses, stress transforms into something far more powerful, a sharpener of focus. When the brain senses a challenge, it triggers the release of adrenaline and cortisol, heightening alertness, quickening reaction time, and narrowing attention to what matters most. This is the body's ancient survival mechanism, the fight or flight response, designed to cut through distraction and lock onto the task at hand. You felt this in action, the rush before stepping onto a stage, the surge of energy as the deadline approaches, the electric clarity when faced with a sudden problem. Your heart beats faster, your senses sharpen, and your mind clears. Instead of paralyzing you, the stress nudges you into a state of heightened awareness, pushing you to perform at your best. Psychologists call this Eustress, or positive stress, the sweet spot where pressure motivates instead of crushes. But this balance is delicate. Too little stress and motivation fades into apathy. Too much and clarity drowns in panic. The magic lies in that fleeting middle ground, where stress sharpens you like a blade without snapping you in half. It is why athletes thrive under competition, why performers excel before an audience, why some of life's most stressful moments also become our most triumphant. In the right amount, stress is not an enemy, it is a hidden ally, awakening strength and focus we might never have discovered in comfort. People with good posture feel more confident. The way you carry your body shapes the way you carry your mind. Standing tall, shoulders back, chest open, and head lifted does more than project confidence to others. It signals confidence to yourself. Psychologists call this embodied cognition, the idea that the body and mind constantly communicate, each influencing the other. When you adopt strong, upright posture, your brain interprets it as a sign of strength and responds by releasing chemicals that boost self-assurance and reduce stress. Research has shown that people sitting or standing in expansive, open postures report feeling more powerful and capable than those hunched over or closed in. Even small adjustments, like uncrossing your arms or lifting your chin, can create subtle psychological shifts that ripple into greater confidence. Posture changes the way you breathe, the way your voice resonates, and even the way your heart rate stabilizes, all of which reinforce the sense that you are in control. Think of how posture transforms your emotions. Slouching makes you feel smaller, weaker, almost invisible, while standing tall gives you a rush of presence, as if the world suddenly takes you more seriously. Imagine walking into a room with your back straight and gaze steady. Others respond differently, and that response feeds back into your self-belief. The body is not just a reflection of inner strength, it is the gateway to it. Confidence, then, is not always born from thought, but from action, and one of the simplest, most powerful actions you can take is to stand like someone who belongs. People notice changes in others more than in themselves. Human beings are wired with a strange blind spot. We often fail to see how much we ourselves are changing, while the shifts in others appear glaringly obvious. You may look in the mirror every day and feel as though nothing has changed, yet an old friend who hasn't seen you in years might marvel at how different you look, act, or even carry yourself. This phenomenon is rooted in familiarity. When we are constantly exposed to ourselves, the gradual transformations blur into the background. But when we look outward, distance makes changes in others stand out with striking clarity. The psychology behind this is simple. The brain adapts to what it sees every day. Because you live inside your own mind and body, changes happen in microscopic increments, too small to notice in real time. But others, who observe you from the outside at intervals, witness your growth, your aging, your evolving personality, like frames in a film, each one showing a leap you couldn't see yourself. This doesn't apply only to physical appearance. Habits, confidence, emotional resilience, even the way someone speaks or laughs. These shifts are often invisible to the self, but apparent to others. It is why you may feel stuck, unchanged, even stagnant, while others say, "You've grown so much." The truth is haunting. You are transforming constantly, but you are the last to notice. We are blind to our own evolution, caught in the illusion of sameness, while everyone around us quietly watches us become someone new. Curiosity activates reward centers in the brain. Curiosity is not a gentle whisper, it is a hunger, a craving that lights up the brain as powerfully as food, sex, or money. Neuroscientists have discovered that when curiosity is triggered, the brain's reward centers, the caudate nucleus, and the ventral striatum ignite with activity, flooding us with dopamine. It is the same chemical surge that drives us toward pleasure and survival. That is why unanswered questions itch at the mind, why cliffhangers keep us awake, and why secrets gnaw at us until they are revealed. Curiosity feels good, and satisfying, it feels even better. This wiring exists because curiosity once meant survival. The humans who asked questions, who poked at the unknown, who risked venturing into the dark, were the ones who discovered food, fire, and tools. Curiosity pushed us forward as a species, turning ignorance into innovation. But in daily life, it grips us more subtly. It's why you can't resist opening a message notification, why you binge watch entire seasons, why you lean in when someone says, "Want to know a secret?" Curiosity hijacks the brain with anticipation, holding us captive until we close the loop. The sensation is not just mental, it is visceral. A restless energy builds in the body when curiosity is unsatisfied, a pull so strong it can override hunger, fatigue, even fear. And when the answer finally comes, the dopamine release is like scratching an unbearable itch, intense relief followed by satisfaction. Curiosity is not trivial. It is one of the brain's greatest motivators. It turns the unknown into a reward, so enticing that we chase it again and again, as if discovery itself were nourishment. People judge others' intelligence by how fast they speak. The speed of your words does more than carry meaning. It shapes perception. People instinctively equate quick speech with sharpness of mind, as if the faster someone talks, the faster their brain must be working. A rapid flow of words suggests confidence, mastery, and intellect, while slower, halting speech often gets mistaken for hesitation, uncertainty, or even ignorance. Without realizing it, we measure intelligence not just by what is said, but by how swiftly it is delivered. This judgment is rooted in psychology. Speed in communication signals mental agility, an ability to think quickly, recall information with ease, and respond without delay. In debates, interviews, or negotiations, fast talkers often dominate because their pace creates the illusion of authority and control. Their words don't just inform, they overwhelm, leaving little room for others to question or challenge. The rhythm itself becomes persuasive, tricking the brain into assuming competence. But the irony is striking. Speaking too quickly can also backfire. Listeners may feel pressured, overwhelmed, or suspicious of whether substance exists beneath the torrent of words. On the other hand, a carefully measured pace can radiate wisdom and gravity, forcing others to lean in and listen. Still, the human bias remains. Speed is too often mistaken for smarts. Think back to the last time you heard someone speak quickly and flawlessly. Didn't it make you assume they knew exactly what they were talking about? The mind makes this leap instantly, often without evidence. Intelligence may be complex, but to the ears of others, sometimes it's judged in nothing more than the seconds between words. People tend to overvalue things they own. Ownership changes perception in ways most of us never notice. The moment something becomes yours, its value in your eyes begins to rise, not because it changed, but because your mind did. Psychologists call this the endowment effect, a powerful bias that makes people unwilling to part with their possessions unless offered far more than what they would pay to acquire them. It is why you might cling to an old sweater long past its use, why selling your car feels like giving away a piece of yourself, or why even a trinket can feel priceless simply because it is yours. This bias is deeply tied to identity. The things we own become extensions of who we are, symbols of our effort, memories, and sense of self. To let them go feels like losing more than an object. It feels like losing a part of ourselves. Studies have shown that people will demand nearly twice as much money to give up something they own compared to what they would willingly pay to obtain it. The ownership itself, not the utility, inflates the perceived worth. Think about how hard it is to throw away sentimental items. The concert ticket stub, the worn-out toy, the book you'll never read again, they hold a value invisible to anyone else. What others see as clutter, you see as irreplaceable. The truth is simple, but unsettling. Ownership blinds us. It convinces us that our possessions are more valuable than they truly are, not because of what they are worth, but because they have become part of our story. Humans often mistake confidence for competence. The human mind is easily swayed by the appearance of certainty. A person who speaks with authority, stands tall, and projects unwavering self-assurance is often assumed to be skilled, intelligent, or knowledgeable, even when they are not. This is the confidence bias, a psychological trap that makes us equate boldness with ability. In a world full of uncertainty, confidence feels like clarity, and clarity feels like truth. From an evolutionary lens, this bias once served a purpose. In early human groups, leaders who appeared confident inspired trust and cohesion. People followed those who acted sure of themselves because indecision could mean danger. That instinct still lingers today, causing us to trust the person who sounds certain over the one who quietly hesitates, even when the latter may actually know more. You've likely felt this at work, in school, or in everyday life. Someone speaks loudly, decisively, and suddenly their words feel more credible, even if they lack evidence. Meanwhile, a quieter voice, heavy with truth but lacking force, is overlooked. We buy into the performance of confidence because it soothes our discomfort with doubt. This is why charismatic leaders gain followings, why interviews favor those who sell themselves, and why society often rewards those who look the part more than those who can truly play it. The illusion is powerful because confidence mimics competence so well. The tragedy is that many truly skilled individuals remain unseen, drowned out by the louder, bolder voices of those who only appear to know. People often seek validation more than truth. For all our claims of wanting honesty, most people crave something far more comforting: validation. The human heart longs to be seen, understood, and affirmed, even when that affirmation comes at the cost of truth. We ask for opinions, but secretly hope for agreement. We share our struggles not to be corrected, but to be told we are justified. The brain is wired to seek safety and belonging, and nothing feels safer than hearing that our thoughts, feelings, or actions are acceptable in the eyes of others. This is why compliments often land more deeply than constructive criticism, why people flock to echo chambers that mirror their beliefs, and why disagreement can feel like rejection. Validation soothes the ego, strokes the soul, and delivers a dopamine rush that logic alone cannot compete with. The truth, on the other hand, is sharp, heavy, and often uncomfortable. It can unravel identities, challenge long-held beliefs, and force painful change. Validation gives us warmth. Truth gives us weight. Most will choose the warmth. Think of how often people turn to social media, not for knowledge, but for likes. Each heart, each comment is a tiny spark of validation that tells them, you matter, you're right, you belong. It doesn't matter if the post is accurate, it matters if it is affirmed. The paradox is haunting. Validation can blind us, trapping us in illusions that feel safe but keep us from growth. Yet, in its absence, we feel starved, invisible, unwanted. Between truth and validation, it is validation that feels like survival and truth that feels like a risk. People are more creative after a positive mood boost. Creativity doesn't bloom in the shadows of despair. It flourishes in the light of joy. When people experience a burst of positivity, their minds open, their thoughts stretch wider, and connections form where none existed before. A good mood floods the brain with dopamine, the chemical of pleasure and reward, and this chemical does more than make you feel good. It enhances the brain's flexibility, encouraging divergent thinking, the very essence of creativity. Suddenly, ideas that seemed impossible begin to weave together effortlessly, and problems that once felt unsolvable find playful solutions. Think of how inspiration strikes after laughter, how music can lift your spirits and spark imagination, or how good news seems to unlock possibilities you couldn't see when weighed down by worry. A positive state of mind acts like sunlight breaking through clouds, revealing paths you never notice. This is why brainstorming sessions thrive on energy and laughter, why children create freely when they feel safe and joyful, and why so many breakthroughs happen not in moments of tension, but in bursts of delight. The science is undeniable. Positivity broadens the scope of attention, while negativity narrows it. A stressed mind clings to survival, focusing only on immediate threats, but a joyful mind wanders, explores, experiments. It takes risks without fear, allowing sparks of brilliance to emerge. This is why some of your most inventive thoughts arrive after a compliment, a success, or even something as simple as a walk in the sun. Creativity doesn't just live in the mind, it feeds on the glow of happiness. Humans remember stories better than facts. The human mind was not built to cling to raw data, it was built to weave meaning. Long before writing or science, our ancestors passed down knowledge through storytelling, embedding lessons in tales of heroes, dangers, and triumphs. A list of facts may vanish from memory within minutes, but a story, rich with emotion and imagery, lingers for years. This is because stories activate more than the language centers of the brain. They engage the senses, the emotions, and the imagination, making the memory multidimensional and far harder to forget. When you hear a story, your brain lights up as if you are living it. Descriptions of food can make your mouth water. Depictions of movement spark motor regions, and emotional arcs stir the amygdala. Facts appeal to logic, but stories appeal to experience, and the brain remembers experiences with far greater intensity. This is why children remember fairy tales long into adulthood, why cultures preserve history through myths and legends, and why speeches that inspire are those that tell stories rather than list statistics. Think of the last time you tried to recall something important. Was it a string of numbers, or was it the narrative attached to them? You may forget the precise year an event occurred, but you remember the story of where you were when it happened. Stories give information a heartbeat, wrapping facts in emotion and meaning. They transform knowledge into memory, ensuring that what might otherwise slip away becomes unforgettable, etched not as data, but as part of the human experience. People perceive taller individuals as more authoritative. Height has always carried an invisible weight of power. Across cultures and centuries, taller individuals have been instinctively viewed as leaders, protectors, and figures of authority. In workplaces, politics, and even social groups, height influences perception in ways most people never consciously recognize. Studies reveal that taller people are more likely to be chosen for leadership roles, earn higher salaries, and command respect, even when skill or intelligence plays no part. This bias is ancient. In our evolutionary past, physical size signaled strength and dominance. A taller figure meant protection, resources, and the ability to lead in conflict. Our brains, still wired by these ancestral instincts, continue to associate height with competence and authority, even though modern leadership requires strategy, empathy, and intelligence far more than brute strength. You've likely felt this bias yourself. Standing in front of someone taller, you may sense a subtle shift in how you speak, defer, or react, even without meaning to. Conversely, when you've towered over others, you may have noticed how your presence seemed to grant you an automatic edge. It is not about who you are. It is about how others perceive you through a primal lens. This perception explains why taller politicians often win elections, why CEOs are statistically taller than average, and why people describe tall individuals with words like commanding or imposing. Height becomes a silent badge of authority, a physical trait mistaken for leadership. The truth is unsettling. Society doesn't just listen to what is said, it listens differently depending on how high above the ground the speaker stands. Humans are naturally drawn to faces over objects. From the moment we open our eyes as infants, our attention is magnetized not by things but by faces. A newborn will stare longer at a face than at any toy. A stranger's smile will capture more focus than 1,000 objects in the room. And even in a crowd, the brain locks onto faces before it registers the environment. This is no accident. Our survival, our emotions, and our very sense of identity are written into the expressions of others. To the human mind, a face is not just an image. It is a story, a signal, a lifeline. Neuroscience has revealed that a special region of the brain, the fusiform face area, is dedicated solely to recognizing and processing faces. It is so sensitive that it activates even when we see face-like patterns in clouds, rocks, or electrical sockets. Our wiring insists on finding faces, real or imagined, because they hold the keys to connection. A glance tells us if someone is angry or kind, friend or foe, trustworthy or dangerous. Faces decode intent faster than words ever could. This draw to faces explains why we remember them more vividly than objects, why we project emotions onto them, and why an expression can pierce us deeper than any spoken sentence. A smile can calm, a frown can wound, and a blank stare can leave us unsettled. Objects may fill our lives, but faces fill our souls. They are the mirrors through which we measure belonging, love, and safety, pulling us toward them with a force as natural and irresistible as gravity itself. People are more influenced by vivid examples than statistics. The human brain is not built to feel numbers. It is built to feel stories. Statistics may speak the language of logic, but vivid examples strike the heart, painting pictures so powerful they overwhelm reason. Tell someone that millions suffer from hunger, and the number drifts like smoke, abstract and cold. But describe a single child with empty eyes and an empty bowl, and the image burns itself into memory, sparking compassion, outrage, and action. This is the identifiable victim effect, a bias so strong that one story can outweigh mountains of data. Evolution explains this pull. Our ancestors didn't survive by calculating probabilities. They survived by paying attention to concrete, sensory details, the sound of a predator, the sight of a wound, the cry of an infant. We respond to the vivid because it feels real, immediate, undeniable. That wiring persists today. Politicians know it, advertisers exploit it, and storytellers rely on it. If you want to move people, don't give them numbers. Give them a face. Even in your own life, think of how you've been swayed. You may ignore statistics about car accidents, yet a friend's harrowing story makes you buckle your seatbelt religiously. You might skim over health data, but one neighbor's diagnosis pushes you to change your habits. The mind absorbs facts, but the heart obeys images. And in that gap between logic and feeling, decisions are made not on the weight of numbers, but on the power of a single unforgettable story. People recall negative words more quickly than positive ones. Language carries power, and the brain reacts differently depending on whether that power cuts or heals. Research shows that people recall negative words like pain, failure, or death faster and more vividly than positive ones. This is not because we enjoy negativity, but because our brains are wired to treat threats as urgent. In the past, survival depended on it. Remembering the warning in someone's shout or the sting of a harsh word could mean the difference between life and danger. That primal vigilance still lives in us, sharpening our focus on the dark over the light. When we hear a negative word, the amygdala activates, sending stress signals through the body that heighten attention. Positive words, while pleasant, don't create the same jolt of urgency. This is why insults linger longer than compliments, and why criticism can echo in your mind for years while praise evaporates in days. It is also why negative headlines spread faster, why gossip thrives, and why harsh language can dominate your thoughts even when you long to let it go. Think about the last time someone said something cruel to you. Chances are you can recall their exact wording, their tone, even the moment it struck you. Now think of a compliment you received around the same time. It's harder, isn't it? Negative words carve deeper grooves into memory, shaping not only how we see others, but how we see ourselves. The human mind, ever watchful for danger, clings to language that wounds, proving that words do not simply pass through us. They stay, they mark, they alter. Multisensory experiences are more memorable. The human brain is not built to remember flat, single-layered experiences. It thrives on richness, on moments that light up more than one sense at a time. When sight, sound, touch, taste, or smell combine, the memory burns brighter, lasting longer than ordinary encounters. A song tied to a specific smell can take you back decades in an instant. The feel of a place, the color of the light, the echo of laughter, even the warmth of food, all fuse together into a memory that feels alive when recalled. This is because the brain stores experiences in a web of associations. The hippocampus links sensory details with emotions, so when multiple senses are activated, the memory has more anchors. It doesn't fade as quickly because it isn't stored as a single strand, but as a tapestry. That is why you may forget a lecture, but remember vividly the classroom where it was taught, the chalk dust in the air, the sound of pens scratching, the smell of old paper. The senses make the memory stick. Think of your most vivid memories. They are never just visual, they are layered. A childhood birthday isn't remembered only by the image of a cake. It is remembered by the sound of voices singing, the sweet taste of frosting, the flicker of candles, and the excitement pulsing in your chest. Multisensory experiences don't just stay with us longer. They feel more alive when we recall them. as though we are stepping back into the moment rather than just remembering it. They make memory less like a photograph and more like a doorway. People tend to align their morals with their groups. Morality feels personal, like a compass buried deep inside us, but in truth it bends far more easily than we admit. People often reshape their sense of right and wrong to fit the values of the group they belong to, even if those values once felt foreign or even unacceptable. The pressure to belong is so strong that it can silence conscience, bending beliefs until they match the collective. In tribes long ago, this instinct meant survival. To question the group was to risk exile, and exile meant death. So, the brain learned to adapt, not just behavior, but morality itself. This is why entire communities can justify cruelty, why soldiers may follow orders that haunt them later, and why ordinary people can stay silent in the face of injustice when their peers do the same. The desire for acceptance outweighs the discomfort of doubt. To the human mind, belonging often feels safer than being right. Psychologists call this moral conformity, and it reveals just how fragile our convictions can be under the weight of the crowd. It explains why you may find yourself nodding in agreement during a discussion you internally oppose, or why people adopt the political, religious, or cultural values of their circle without ever fully questioning them. The haunting truth is that morality is not always about truth or justice. It is about connection. To align with the group is to secure belonging, and for the human heart, that belonging often feels more vital than holding on to the lonely, painful clarity of standing alone. Humans underestimate their own biases. We like to believe we see the world clearly, that our judgments are fair, our choices rational, our vision unclouded. But the truth is far more unsettling. Every thought, every decision, every perception is tinted by hidden biases we barely recognize. We are quick to spot prejudice in others, yet blind to the quiet distortions shaping our own minds. Psychologists call this the bias blind spot, and it means that even as we nod knowingly about human error, we secretly exempt ourselves, convinced that we are the exception. This illusion of objectivity is seductive. It allows us to trust our instincts, to defend our choices, to believe we are reasonable even when evidence screams otherwise. But beneath the surface, biases weave their threads. Confirmation bias makes us favor information that supports our beliefs. Hindsight bias convinces us we knew it all along, and self-serving bias ensures we take credit for successes but blame failures on others. These invisible forces guide us like puppeteers while we proudly imagine we are moving freely. Think of the arguments you've had, the judgments you've passed, the times you were certain you were right, only to later realize how much your perspective had been clouded. Bias doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It makes us confident in shaky evidence, righteous in flawed logic, blind to truths that contradict what we want to believe. And the cruelest twist is this: the smarter and more self-assured you are, the more likely you are to deny the grip of bias. We don't just live with distortion, we mistake it for clarity. People often mimic accents of those they admire. Speech is not just communication, it is identity, belonging, and subtle imitation. When people admire someone, whether it's a friend, a leader, or a celebrity, they often find themselves unconsciously mimicking that person's accent, rhythm, or tone. It is rarely deliberate. Instead, it happens naturally, as if the brain is saying, if I sound like them, I am closer to them. This tendency is rooted in our deep human need to connect, to mirror those we respect, and to feel a part of the world they represent. Psychologists link this to the mirror neuron system, which activates when we observe and imitate the behaviors of others. Just as people mirror gestures, facial expressions, and posture to build rapport, they also mirror the subtle music of speech. This phenomenon is sometimes called the chameleon effect, and it explains why accents shift during travel, why friends begin to sound alike, and why admiration so often leaves its trace in the way we speak. Think about how accents creep into daily life. You laugh alongside someone long enough, and suddenly your cadence matches theirs. You binge watch a TV show set in another country and catch yourself echoing its inflections. Around people you respect, your voice reshapes itself, softening edges or sharpening tones, all in an unconscious effort to belong. Accents are more than sound. They are identity markers, social badges. By adopting the voice of those we admire, we are not just copying, we are reaching, yearning for connection, and weaving ourselves into the same tribe as the ones we look up to. Anticipation can bring more joy than the actual event. The human mind has a peculiar gift. It can create joy from something that hasn't even happened yet. Anticipation, the act of looking forward to an experience, often stirs more happiness than the event itself. Planning a vacation can feel more exciting than the trip. Dreaming about success can ignite more fire than the achievement. The reason lies in how the brain rewards us, not only for what we experience, but for what we expect to experience. When we anticipate, dopamine begins to flow, painting the future in bright, exaggerated colors. The brain magnifies possibility, stripping away flaws and disappointments, leaving only an idealized version of what's to come. The countdown to a concert, the wait for a date, the night before a holiday, all glow with a special kind of magic. The unknown allows us to fill in the blanks with perfection, making the expectation sweeter than reality ever could be. But when the long-awaited moment finally arrives, reality sets its boundaries. The concert ends too soon, the vacation has delays, the date carries awkward silences. Reality can rarely compete with the flawless fantasy built in the mind. Yet strangely, that doesn't make anticipation worthless. It makes it precious. The joy wasn't only in the event, but in the waiting, the imagining, the delicious buildup of what might be. Anticipation is proof that happiness does not only live in the present, it thrives in the future we dream about. Sometimes the brightest joy is not in what happens to us, but in what we believe is coming. People are more generous when reminded of mortality. Death is the shadow we spend our lives trying not to see, yet when it brushes close, something profound awakens in us. Studies show that when people are reminded of their own mortality through words, images, or experiences, they often become more generous, more compassionate, more willing to give. The looming awareness that life is fleeting shifts our perspective. Suddenly, money feels less important, possessions less permanent, and connection more urgent. Giving becomes a way to leave a mark, to prove that we mattered, to touch eternity, even as we face the truth that we will not remain. This phenomenon is called mortality salience, and it reveals a paradox in human psychology. The fear of death can stir some of our most life-affirming behaviors. When reminded of the inevitable end, people often want to contribute to something larger than themselves, whether through charity, kindness, or legacy. Generosity becomes a defiance of death, a way of saying, "My existence leaves behind light, not emptiness." Think of how survivors of near-death experiences often devote themselves to helping others, or how communities come together with extraordinary compassion after a tragedy. Mortality sharpens our vision. It strips away illusions and reminds us that we cannot take, only give. What makes this so haunting is that generosity in these moments is not just altruism. It is an answer to fear. To give is to soften the terror of vanishing, to weave ourselves into the fabric of others' lives so that a part of us continues. Death may be inevitable, but generosity whispers that love and kindness can outlive the body. People can experience phantom vibrations from phones. Have you ever felt your phone buzz in your pocket, only to pull it out and find nothing? That eerie sensation is called phantom vibration syndrome, and it reveals just how deeply technology has rewired our nervous system. Our brains, trained to anticipate the tiny buzz of a notification, begin to misfire, interpreting random muscle spasms, shifts in clothing, or even the faint pressure of movement as the signal of an incoming message. We've become so attuned to the constant hum of digital connection that our bodies create it, even when it isn't there. Psychologists suggest this happens because the brain's sensory filters have been hijacked by expectation. In a world where alerts mean urgency, attention, or validation, our nervous system hovers in a state of hyper-awareness, scanning for vibrations that confirm we are not forgotten. The body, in its over-preparedness, sends false alarms, and with each phantom buzz, we're reminded that we are tethered to our devices not just by habit, but by biology. It's unsettling when you think about it, the way technology has seeped so deeply into our minds that our own bodies now mimic its signals. We are haunted by the ghost of a vibration, chasing the hope of a message that never came. It is a modern phantom, invisible yet powerful, pulling our attention toward the glow of a screen. The phone doesn't even need to ring anymore. Our minds have learned to ring for it. People perceive others as happier than they are. Human beings live behind masks, and most of us rarely see the struggles others carry. Psychology shows that people consistently perceive others as happier, more fulfilled, and less troubled than themselves. Social comparison fuels this illusion. We measure our private pain against the polished surface others display, forgetting that their silence does not mean absence of suffering. What we see is the highlight reel, not the hidden footage. The result is a haunting belief that everyone else is living brighter, lighter lives, while we stumble alone in the shadows. This effect is magnified by the way people present themselves. Few confess their deepest fears in casual conversation. Fewer still display their failures openly, and almost no one wears sorrow on their sleeve day after day. Instead, we smile, we laugh, we nod, and we share only fragments that fit the social script. Observers then take those fragments as the whole story, even on social media, where filters and carefully curated posts dominate. The illusion of perfect lives becomes even harder to resist. Think of how often you've looked at someone, an acquaintance, a colleague, even a close friend, and thought, they have it all together. Yet later, when cracks show, you realize they were carrying battles you never imagined. The truth is that we rarely perceive reality. We perceive performance. Others appear happier because we witness their surface while drowning in the depth of our own emotions. In this way, life can feel lonelier than it truly is because the struggles of others are hidden while ours scream inside us, unrelenting. People are more creative in messy environments. Order soothes the mind, but chaos often sparks it. Research shows that people surrounded by clutter, scattered papers, and disorganized spaces tend to think more creatively than those in sterile, perfectly tidy rooms. A messy environment disrupts routine, breaking the brain free from rigid patterns and encouraging unconventional thought. Where order whispers stay safe, follow the rules, disorder whispers why not try something different. The human mind adapts to its surroundings. In neat, structured environments, it leans toward conformity and efficiency. But when objects are scattered, when surfaces are untidy, the mind becomes less constrained. Creativity thrives in disruption, and mess provides just enough of it to shake the brain awake. This is why so many inventors, writers, and artists are notorious for chaotic workspaces. Their desks aren't just cluttered, they're landscapes of inspiration, each misplaced item a trigger for new associations. Think about the last time you worked in a perfectly organized space. You likely felt focused, controlled, but also limited to the task at hand. Now, contrast that with the strange ideas that emerge when you're in a cluttered cafe, a noisy room, or your own messy bedroom. The lack of order creates freedom. It tells the mind that rules don't have to apply here, that something wild and new can emerge. Mess may look like chaos from the outside, but within it lies possibility. Creativity doesn't always bloom in silence and symmetry. It often grows in the cracks, in the clutter, in the places where disorder leaves space for imagination to play. People underestimate the time others spend thinking of them. Most people move through life convinced they are forgettable, that their words, mistakes, or small gestures barely register in the minds of others. Yet research reveals the opposite. Others think about us far more often than we realize. The human tendency is to downplay our impact, to assume we slip quickly from memory, but the truth is that we linger in ways we will never fully know. That offhand comment, the smile you gave, the kindness you offered, even the awkward stumble you replay in shame, these moments often echo in someone else's thoughts long after you've dismissed them. This phenomenon is called the spotlight effect, where people believe others notice them less than they actually do. But here lies the haunting twist. The traces we leave on others are invisible to us. A joke you told might resurface in their laughter weeks later. A kindness you forgot about might still be warming their heart. Even a conflict or careless remark might be carried like a small wound, shaping how they feel when your name is spoken. We are woven into the mental lives of others in quiet, enduring ways, yet we move on as if we were barely a shadow. This underestimation is both tragic and beautiful. Tragic because we fail to recognize the weight of our presence. Beautiful because it means we matter more than we think. We ripple through the minds of others, shaping their days in unseen ways. You may never know it, but right now, someone may be thinking of you, replaying a piece of you in their private world. People are more trusting when holding a warm drink. The simple warmth of a cup in your hands can quietly shape the way you see the world. Studies in psychology have revealed that people holding a warm drink, like coffee or tea, tend to judge others as more generous, more trustworthy, and more caring compared to those holding something cold. The temperature seeps not only into the skin, but into perception itself, blurring the line between physical warmth and emotional warmth. To the brain, the two are linked, and the comfort of heat becomes a signal that people too can be trusted. This connection is no accident. From infancy, warmth is tied to safety and love, the heat of a mother's embrace, the shelter of fire, the reassurance of touch. The mind stores these associations so deeply that even as adults, a simple sensation of warmth revives them, quietly whispering, "You are safe here." Holding a cold drink, by contrast, makes people more likely to see others as distant, unfriendly, or unapproachable. Without realizing it, we judge human character through the lens of temperature. Think about it. Meeting someone new while sharing coffee feels instantly more intimate, while clutching an icy glass may leave the encounter cooler, less connected. Negotiators, salespeople, and even interviewers can be swayed without realizing why. Their impressions softened by nothing more than the warmth resting in their palms. It is a reminder of how fragile and suggestible trust can be, how easily it can be nudged, not by logic or evidence, but by something as simple as the heat of a drink in hand. People's memories of events can change when retold. Memory feels solid, like a photograph tucked safely in the mind, but every time we tell a story from our past, we are not just recalling it, we are rewriting it. Each retelling is a reconstruction, vulnerable to embellishment, suggestion, and the emotions of the moment. Over time, the memory can drift so far from the truth that what we believe happened and what actually happened are no longer the same. This is why eyewitness accounts, though confident, are notoriously unreliable, and why siblings can argue endlessly about the details of a shared childhood moment. When you retell an event, your brain retrieves fragments and then fills in gaps, often unconsciously, with assumptions or cues from the reactions of others. If someone nods or adds a detail, your mind may weave it into the memory as though it always belonged there. The hippocampus, which helps form memories, is malleable, and with each recall, the story is slightly reshaped before being saved again. What began as fact gradually evolves into narrative, polished and edited with every retelling. Think about the family stories passed down through generations. What starts as a simple truth becomes layered with exaggerations, omissions, and flourishes until it borders on legend. Or consider how the more you tell a painful memory, the sharper or sometimes softer it becomes, depending on how you frame it. Our memories are not frozen, they are alive, shifting with every word we speak. Each retelling is both preservation and distortion, making our past less a record of what was and more a story of what we believe. People make quicker decisions under time pressure. When the clock is ticking and time begins to vanish, the human mind shifts into survival mode. Decisions that might take hours of weighing pros and cons are made in seconds, driven more by instinct than by analysis. Under pressure, the brain strips away the unnecessary, narrowing focus to what feels most urgent, most vital, most immediate. It is a defense mechanism, a way of cutting through hesitation when hesitation could mean loss. In moments of urgency, adrenaline floods the body, sharpening the senses and speeding up thought processes. Logic doesn't disappear, but it is compressed, forced into shortcuts known as heuristics, mental rules of thumb that allow quick judgment. These shortcuts can save lives in crises, like choosing which direction to run during danger or making a snap decision behind the wheel. The cost, however, is accuracy. Decisions made under time pressure are faster, but they are more likely to be flawed, biased, or incomplete. You felt this yourself. A deadline looms and suddenly you decide in minutes what you couldn't decide in weeks. A limited time offer flashes on a screen and you buy without thinking. In the rush of urgency, the brain convinces you that speed is safety, that action is better than hesitation. Time pressure doesn't just quicken choices, it transforms them. It strips away doubt, leaving raw instinct in its place. In those moments, we are not the careful planners we believe ourselves to be. We are creatures of impulse, making choices not because they are best, but because they are fast. Humans seek patterns, even when none exist. The human brain is a pattern-hunting machine, forever weaving meaning out of chaos. We see shapes in clouds, messages in coincidences, and connections in randomness that were never there. This instinct, called apophenia, is one of our most powerful gifts and one of our greatest traps. It allowed our ancestors to notice the rustle in the grass and connect it to danger, to track the stars and predict the seasons, to find order where survival depended on foresight. But the same wiring also makes us conjure illusions, believing in hidden designs when the universe is silent. You felt it yourself, hearing your name in static, finding lucky numbers in chance sequences, or believing two unrelated events must be linked. The brain is so desperate for order that it fills in the gaps, whispering, "There must be a reason." This craving soothes us because randomness feels unbearable. To admit that chaos rules is to confront uncertainty, and uncertainty is terrifying. Patterns, even false ones, give us the illusion of control. This is why gamblers see streaks in dice rolls, why people cling to superstitions, and why conspiracy theories spread so easily. Our minds would rather embrace a fabricated story than accept meaninglessness. The pattern feels safer than the void. Yet there is something hauntingly human about this. We are creatures who cannot help but search, who paint constellations into the stars and hear rhythm in the noise. Even when none exist, we create patterns because without them, the world feels too vast, too random, too empty to endure. People are more likely to agree with statements when tired. Exhaustion weakens more than the body. It softens the mind. When people are tired, their ability to analyze, question, and resist persuasion fades. The critical voice that normally evaluates information becomes sluggish, leaving them far more likely to nod along, to accept statements at face value, and to agree simply because arguing feels too heavy. Fatigue lowers mental defenses, and in that vulnerable state, the path of least resistance is compliance. Psychologists call this ego depletion, the draining of mental resources that normally guard us against suggestion and manipulation. Imagine the difference between reading a contract first thing in the morning versus at midnight after a long day. The same words, but one version of you would scrutinize, while the other would skim, trust, and surrender. This is why sales pitches, negotiations, or even heated arguments often drag on late into the evening. Fatigue makes people pliable, more willing to give in just to find relief. Think of how often you've said, "Fine, whatever," when you were too drained to fight, even though you disagreed, or how your mind, foggy from lack of sleep, accepted something you later questioned in the light of day. Tiredness turns resistance into silence, skepticism into passivity. And those who understand this, leaders, persuaders, manipulators, sometimes use timing as their weapon. It isn't always the strength of the argument that wins. Sometimes it's the weakness of the listener, worn down by exhaustion, agreeing not out of belief, but because their mind no longer has the energy to resist. People experience stronger emotions when sleep deprived. Sleep is not just rest, it is regulation, the silent balancing act that keeps your emotions steady. When you are deprived of it, the brain loses its ability to manage feelings with clarity, and suddenly every experience hits harder. Irritation becomes rage, sadness deepens into despair, and even small joys can feel strangely overwhelming. Neuroscientists have found that the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm center, becomes up to 60% more reactive when you are sleep deprived, firing wildly without the calming influence of the prefrontal cortex. It is as if your emotions are left unsupervised, raw and unfiltered. This is why the world feels heavier after a restless night. A minor inconvenience, like a missed text or spilled coffee, can feel catastrophic. A small slight can cut deeper than it should. Even watching a movie or listening to music becomes more intense, as if the emotional volume has been turned up far beyond normal. Without sleep, the brain struggles to separate what truly matters from what doesn't, drowning you in amplified feelings you cannot fully control. Think of the tears that come more easily when you're exhausted, the arguments that flare up late at night, the hopelessness that feels unbearable after too little rest. Sleep deprivation magnifies emotion in a way that distorts reality, making problems appear larger, wounds deeper, and burdens heavier. In those tired hours, the world does not change, your brain does. Without the stabilizing power of rest, every emotion becomes sharper, louder, and harder to bear, leaving you vulnerable to storms that feel all-consuming. People are influenced by background music in stores. Step into a store and you may think you're simply browsing, but in reality, your mind is already being guided by something subtle and invisible, the music playing in the background. Studies show that the tempo, genre, and volume of music can dramatically shape the way people shop. Slow, soothing music makes customers linger longer, encouraging them to browse more and spend more money. Fast-paced music creates urgency, nudging people to move quickly and make impulse purchases. Even the style of music can shift buying behavior. Classical music, for example, can make shoppers choose more expensive items, as if luxury itself is woven into the notes. This influence works because music bypasses logic and strikes directly at the emotional centers of the brain. Without realizing it, your mood synchronizes with the rhythm around you. A cheerful melody can make you feel more positive about your environment, while a darker tone can make you restless or anxious. The store doesn't just sell products, it sells an atmosphere, a state of mind carefully crafted to prime your choices. Think of the last time you found yourself lingering in a shop without really knowing why, or the times a familiar song seemed to draw you deeper into an aisle, making you stay just a little longer. It wasn't coincidence, it was designed. Retailers know that your heart rate, your pace, even your willingness to splurge can all be orchestrated with nothing more than sound. In those moments, you're not just shopping, you're dancing to an invisible rhythm, your choices echoing the music you didn't even notice was playing. People judge strangers within milliseconds of seeing them. Before a word is spoken, before a hand is shaken, your mind has already made a decision. In as little as 100 milliseconds, less than the blink of an eye, people form lasting judgments about a stranger's trustworthiness, competence, attractiveness, and intent. This lightning-fast evaluation is not reasoned. It is instinctive, born from survival. For our ancestors, pausing to carefully weigh whether a stranger was friend or foe could mean death. The brain evolved to judge instantly, to act on impressions carved from nothing more than a face, a posture, a glance. These snap judgments are so powerful, they often override later evidence. A person who looks trustworthy may be believed even if their actions prove otherwise. Someone who appears intimidating may never escape the shadow of that first impression, no matter how kind they are. Entire opportunities, jobs, friendships, romances can be won or lost in the first breath of contact. The haunting truth is that these judgments are less about accuracy and more about bias. We are influenced by symmetry in faces, by posture, by expressions that resemble those of people from our past. Our brains search for shortcuts, labeling strangers instantly to reduce uncertainty. But those shortcuts are riddled with prejudice, trapping others in assumptions they may never escape. Yet, despite the danger of this wiring, it persists, shaping every human interaction. With every stranger you pass, your mind whispers its verdict before you even notice. It is an ancient reflex, a survival mechanism that still governs us, reminding us that first impressions are not just fast, they are nearly impossible to undo. Humans are less logical. When hungry, hunger is not just a growl in the stomach. It is a silent force that hijacks the brain. When blood sugar drops, the body diverts energy toward the basic drive for survival. Find food, eat, live. Logic, patience, and rational decision-making are pushed aside, leaving impulse and emotion in control. This is why people make rash choices when hungry, why tempers flare, and why the smallest inconveniences feel unbearable. The mind is not malfunctioning. It is obeying ancient wiring that prioritizes survival over reason. Psychologists have found that hunger reduces the brain's ability to process complex information and weigh long-term consequences. Decisions become short-sighted, skewed toward immediate gratification. A hungry person will choose quick rewards over smarter, delayed outcomes. This explains why grocery shopping on an empty stomach often leads to bags full of junk food, why arguments escalate faster when someone hasn't eaten, and why the phrase "hangry" resonates so universally. Hunger strips away the layers of civility, exposing the raw instinct to satisfy the body's most primal need. Consider how your mood shifts when you skip a meal. The irritability, the fog, the way logic feels distant. Even small tasks feel overwhelming, and patience thins to nothing. This isn't weakness, it is biology. The brain runs on glucose, and when supply dwindles, so does the ability to reason. Hunger makes humans less logical, not because they lack intelligence, but because the body demands obedience. Until it is fed, the mind bends, reminding us that survival always takes precedence over reason. People tend to mirror each other's emotions unconsciously. Emotions are contagious, spreading silently from one person to another without a single word spoken. When you see someone laugh, your lips twitch into a smile before you realize it. When you witness tears, a heaviness gathers in your chest as if their pain has become your own. This phenomenon is emotional contagion, the unconscious mirroring of others' feelings, and it is rooted in the brain's mirror neurons, cells that fire not only when we act, but when we observe the same action or emotion in someone else. From an evolutionary perspective, this reflex kept our ancestors alive. Feeling the fear of the tribe meant fleeing danger together. Sharing joy reinforced bonds and ensured cooperation. Even today, this wiring governs our daily interactions. Walk into a room buzzing with excitement, and you will feel your own energy rise. Enter a space heavy with grief, and your body sinks into the same weight. We don't just witness emotion, we absorb it, carry it, and reflect it back. Think of how quickly a single person's laughter can spread through a crowd, or how tension thickens when one person's anger erupts at a dinner table. These shifts happen without conscious effort, pulling people into emotional harmony or discord. The truth is, our inner worlds are not as private as we think. They leak into the atmosphere, seeping into others and reshaping how they feel. To be human is to live in emotional mirrors, reflecting back the joy, sorrow, and rage of those around us, often without ever realizing we've been caught in the reflection. People often conform to social norms unconsciously. Much of what we do each day isn't the result of deliberate choice. It is the silent pull of social norms shaping our actions without us even realizing it. We eat certain foods at certain times, dress a particular way, speak in specific tones, and behave in predictable manners, not because we actively decided to, but because society has taught us this is how it's done. Conformity often hides in plain sight, disguised as routine, slipping into our behavior so smoothly we mistake it for our own free will. From birth, humans are wired to belong. Survival once depended on being accepted by the group, and those instincts remain. The brain rewards us with comfort when we fit in and punishes us with anxiety when we stand apart. This is why we laugh when others laugh, why we applaud when the crowd applauds, why we hesitate to break rules even when no one is watching. The need to belong outweighs the need to question. You've likely felt it in subtle ways, crossing a street because others moved first, choosing silence when everyone else agreed, or mirroring the behavior of a group even when it clashed with your instincts. You didn't think about it, you simply did it. That is the frightening power of unconscious conformity. Social norms aren't just suggestions, they are invisible chains, binding us tighter than laws. They shape our choices in ways we rarely notice, nudging us to blend in, to follow, to obey. And so often, we conform not out of agreement, but out of a quiet, unspoken fear of being the one who stands alone. Humans are more likely to take risks in groups. Alone, caution whispers loudly, but in a group, that whisper is drowned out by the roar of collective daring. Psychologists call this phenomenon risky shift, the tendency for people to make bolder, more dangerous choices when surrounded by others than they would ever make alone. What feels reckless in solitude suddenly feels thrilling, acceptable, even safe when many hands share the weight of the decision. Responsibility becomes diffused, fear diluted, and courage amplified by the presence of the crowd. This instinct is rooted in survival. In our evolutionary past, risk was less terrifying when faced together. To hunt a dangerous animal, to explore uncharted land, to confront an enemy, these risks felt bearable when shared by the tribe. The brain still clings to that wiring, which is why groups often push individuals beyond their personal limits. You've seen it in teenagers, daring each other to leap from heights, in investors swept up by market frenzy, in riots where ordinary people commit acts they would never consider alone. The presence of others emboldens us, creating a sense of invincibility. We tell ourselves, if everyone is doing it, it must be right. If everyone is taking the risk, it can't be that dangerous. But this is the trap. Groups do not eliminate danger, they only blur our perception of it. The adrenaline of belonging overpowers the instinct of caution. What is left is a haunting truth. In the safety of the crowd, people surrender their fear, their judgment, and sometimes even their morality, stepping boldly into risks they would never face in the silence of solitude. People are more motivated by deadlines. Deadlines have a way of igniting the human spirit. A task that sits untouched for weeks suddenly comes alive when the clock begins to run out, and the weight of urgency pushes us to act. Psychologists call this the deadline effect, when time pressure transforms procrastination into productivity. The looming sense of an approaching end sparks adrenaline, heightens focus, and clears away distractions. The brain, once sluggish with excuses, sharpens under pressure, driving us to finish what once felt impossible. This reaction is deeply tied to survival. For our ancestors, immediate threats demanded immediate action, and the brain evolved to prioritize urgency over comfort. That wiring still rules us today. With endless time, we drift, telling ourselves tomorrow, but when the deadline approaches, tomorrow evaporates and action becomes unavoidable. The ticking clock flips a switch inside us, from idleness to intensity, from avoidance to determination. Think about how often your best work has been done in the final hours before a deadline. The pressure forces clarity. Suddenly, the irrelevant details vanish, and only what matters most remains. Even creativity can surge under this pressure, as the mind, stripped of endless choices, must improvise and decide quickly. Deadlines don't just motivate, they force prioritization, stripping away perfectionism and hesitation. Yet there's something haunting about this drive. Without pressure, many tasks would remain dreams, half-finished or abandoned. It is not always inspiration that makes us act, but the relentless march of time reminding us that the window to act is closing. And in that urgency, humans often find their greatest momentum.